It's been good.
And in fact, I already sent the stuff here.
That's okay.
I will just get back. Yeah. Well, and I'm let's talk now about the so that we make sure that yeah. So I think that not at all. It's a combination of yeah, all of this stuff. Like this
Okay, I'd like to welcome everyone here for tonight's Puyallup City Council meeting on January 9th, 2024. Tonight, we're here to celebrate. We're here to celebrate the people of Puyallup and the choice of elected officials they brought here to serve you and to really carry out the purposes and the vision of our city. So as we gather here tonight, I want to thank you. All of us want to thank you for being here. What a tremendous turnout. You know, I can't speak for other cities. I can only speak for Puyallup, but I got a feeling that larger cities probably don't have this much of a turnout on an election or opening night of a new year. So to see the tremendous turnout here in the city of Puyallup is a real testament to your heart for our city, your heart for the culture of our city, and for the prosperity and the advancement and the vibrancy of our city. So a real testament to you and how much you care. Sometimes, you know, things get heated on times and certain issues, but that's a good sign. That means that people care. And if they didn't care, you would have nobody showing up at meetings, things would go on as is, and nobody would express any thoughts. So again, congratulations to all of you here. Welcome on behalf of the Puyallup City Council here to celebrate tonight the voters choosing of the team to serve you over these next few years. So one of the most favorite things I have to start out as mayor has been the Pledge of Allegiance. So if you would all rise with me as we state the Pledge of Allegiance. And before we get into it, I would like you to, we probably said this over the decades of our lifetimes, maybe hundreds and maybe even thousands of times, but as we say it tonight, see if there's any sentence or words in there that stand out to you, and I'll share mine as well. So let's join with me, shall we? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. You may be seated. All right, City Clerk, would you please conduct the roll call?
Yes, sir. Councilmember Dorr,
Present.
Councilmember Adler,
Present.
Councilmember Castema,
Present.
Councilmember King,
Present.
Councilmember Gilliam,
Present.
Deputy Mayor Whitting,
Present.
Mayor Johnson.
And present. Thank you so much, City Clerk. Council, before us, we have an agenda before us, and if there's any concerns or thoughts, please share so. Otherwise, I might entertain a motion to approve the agendas before you tonight.
Move approval. Second.
Okay. Council, we have a motion and a second to approve the agendas before us. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
And those opposed, nay. Motion passes. Tonight, I'd like to share a proclamation that really, quite frankly, is representative of a national day that sometimes is forgotten about. And every January 16th, whether you know it or not, if you do some research on it, there's a day called Religious Freedom Day. And this is in reference to that. It was authored and written by Thomas Jefferson and guided through the legislative process by James Madison and adopted back in 1786. This very important work became a foundational basis for the Establishment Clause of the First Amendment of the U.S. Constitution, which led to the freedom of religions for all Americans. The the Religious Freedom Day is yearly commemorated on January 16th via a proclamation by then President Bill Clinton, as well as every other Democratic and Republican president of the United States since 1993. Most recently, even President Biden honored it as well. And before I read the proclamation, in the official capacity, I want to share the following comments that reflect my personal exercise of religious liberty and free speech within my personal capacity as follows. While I fully recognize there are some who do not share my view of religious faith, and if that is the case, let me state with sincerity, I respect your right of free will and personal choice. However, there are many who do share a common religious faith. Hence, with that recognition in mind, this is my following comment. I invite the citizens of Puyallup and beyond to daily give thanks for our city, for our state, our county, and our nation, for the many freedoms and blessings that God has bestowed upon us. And I join with all people of faith with fervent prayers to petition God for a gracious awakening to his truth, his divine guidance, his mercy, his protection upon every sector of our lives on a holistic basis. And now I go into the proclamation. Whereas throughout our history, Americans of many religious and belief systems have turned to prayer for strength, hope, and guidance. And whereas prayer has nourished countless souls and powered moral movements to include essential rights against racial injustice, child labor, infringements on the rights of disabled Americans, and whereas prayer is also a daily practice for many, whether it is to ask for help or strength, or to give thanks over blessings bestowed. Whereas the First Amendment to our Constitution protects the rights to free speech and religious liberty, including the right for all Americans to pray. These freedoms have helped us to create and sustain a nation of remarkable religious vitality and diversity across the many generations of our existence. Whereas we unite with purpose and resolve and recommit ourselves to the core freedoms that help define and guide our nation from its earliest days. We celebrate our incredibly good fortune that as Americans, we can exercise our convictions freely, no matter what our faith or beliefs. Let us find in our prayers, however they are delivered, the determination to overcome adversity, to rise above our differences, and to come together as one to meet this moment in history. Now, therefore, the city of Puyallup acknowledges prayer as a protected freedom under the First Amendment of our Constitution for those who choose to exercise it. In witness thereof, I, Mayor Dean Johnson, have hereunto set my hand and caused the city of the seal of Puyallup to be affixed this day, this 9th day of January, 2024. And at this time now, we're going to move into oaths of office, and we have 4 council members who were elected to serve, and the voters of Puyallup spoke clearly on who they want to serve. And, you know, as we're getting ready for that, the city clerk comes, first we'll have Councilmember Adler start that process. You know, over the years, if you watched city councils of races, sometimes they can be a little contentious. Sometimes there's a little bit of emotion and disagreement and all these factors of human expressions. But one thing that's always guided me, even in those disagreements, is to speak bad of another council member is to speak bad against the people who elected them, because they elected the team, who they want on the team. And whether I may agree with council member so-and-so or elected so-and-so, to speak bad against them is really to speak bad against the people who elected them. Therefore, they set the team. Let's work together and to try and find common ground and to try and serve our constituent base in a manner that would be pleasing and exercise their expression of rights. So at this time, I'm going to ask City Clerk to, where are you, City Clerk? Are you coming? Oh, there we are. Come over here to the center, and we're going to take the oaths of office.
Raise your right hand. Repeat after me. I, Warren Adler,
I, Warren Adler,
do solemnly swear or affirm
do solemnly swear or affirm
that I am a citizen of the United States
that I am a citizen of the United States
and of the state of Washington,
and of the state of Washington,
that I am legally qualified
that I am legally qualified
to assume the office of District 1,
to assume the office of District 1,
City Council Member for the City of Puyallup,
City Council Member for the City of Puyallup,
that I will support the Constitution and laws of the United States
that I will support the Constitution and laws of the United States
and of the state of Washington,
and of the state of Washington,
and that I will faithfully and impartially
and I will faithfully and impartially
discharge the duties of this office to the best of my ability.
discharge the duties of this office to the best of my ability.
Welcome aboard, Councilmember Adler. Okay, next we're going to have Councilmember Gilliam go next.
Raise your right hand. Repeat after me. I, Renee Gilliam,
I, Renee Gilliam,
do solemnly swear or affirm
do solemnly swear or affirm
that I am a citizen of the United States
that I am a citizen of the United States
and of the state of Washington,
and of the state of Washington,
that I am legally qualified
that I am legally qualified
to assume the office of council member at large
to assume the office of,
of council member at large
to assume the office
of council member at large
member at large
for the city of Puyallup,
for the city of Puyallup,
that I will support the Constitution
that I will support the Constitution
and laws of the United States
and laws of the United States
and of the state of Washington,
and of the state of Washington,
and that I will faithfully
and I will faithfully
and impartially
and impartially
discharge the duties of this office
discharge the duties of this office
to the best of my ability.
to the very best.
Welcome aboard, Councilmember Gilliam. Okay, next we have Councilmember and Deputy Mayor Whitting.
Raise your right hand, repeat after me. I, Ned Whitting,
I, Ned Whelan,
do solemnly swear or affirm
do solemnly swear or affirm
that I am a citizen of the United States
I'm a citizen of the United States
and of the state of Washington,
and of the state of Washington,
that I am legally qualified
that I am legally qualified
to assume the office of District 3
I'm doing the same thing she did.
to assume the office of District 3
To assume the office of District 3
City Council Member
City Council Member
for the City of Puyallup,
for the city of Puyallup,
that I will support the Constitution
that I will support the Constitution
and laws of the United States
and laws of the United States
and of the state of Washington,
and of the state of Washington,
and that I will faithfully
and that I will faithfully
and impartially
and impartially
discharge the duties of this office
discharge the duties of this office
to the best of my ability.
to the best of my ability.
Congratulations, sir.
Welcome back. So, in my oath of office, I wanted to just note a couple of things. One is, there are three people that, if they were still around today, would be here to support me. And unfortunately, they're in heaven right now. And so symbolically, I have the Bible of each of those three people that here tonight that I've got wrapped together with a ribbon. That the top one is my mother's Bible. The bottom one is my father's Bible. And the middle one is my little brother who died tragically in a car accident at age 25. And so if they were here today, they would be here, but I'll think of them as I take the oath of the office on their Bibles. I'd like to have my wife and my daughter and my sister come and hold these so I can take the oath of office on them. If you would hold them up, because they're kind of heavy to kind of go like this and have one hand up. So if you wouldn't mind. Yeah, come on in. All right. And then please chop it up for me so I don't mess up.
Raise your right hand and repeat after me.
Sure.
I, Dean Johnson,
I, Dean Johnson,
do solemnly swear or affirm
do solemnly swear or affirm
that I am a citizen of the United States
that I am a citizen of the United States
and of the state of Washington,
and of the state of Washington,
that I am legally qualified
that I am legally qualified
to assume the office of District 2
to assume the office of District 2
City Council Member
City Council Member
for the City of Puyallup,
for the city of Puyallup,
that I will support the Constitution
that I will support the Constitution
and laws of the United States
and laws of the United States
and of the state of Washington,
and of the state of Washington,
and that I will faithfully
and that I will faithfully
and impartially
discharge
the duties of this office
the duties of this office
to the best of my
to the
ability,
best of my ability,
as guided by the wisdom of God.
as guided by the wisdom of God. Thank you. Thank you. All righty then. Fantastic. All right, I think we're we're to a point now to where we're gonna have the designation of mayor. And let's see, I got all these notes here. Before we do that, I wanted to before we designate the new mayor coming up, which is tradition in our council, I wanted to just reflect back and take a moment. And I've checked with our incoming mayor if it would be okay, and he granted me the ability to share a few words, and then we'll turn it over to him and he'll take at the meeting from here. But as I reflect back on my service as mayor of Puyallup, I am filled with a deep and overwhelming outpouring of gratitude and thankfulness. I've been known at times to be somewhat successful in articulating my mind and heart and sentiment on various subject matters. However, in this case tonight, I'm not sure that I'm able to properly articulate the sincere honor it has been to serve you, the people of Puyallup, and the great people of our city within this capacity. I cannot tell you, and I mean this, I cannot tell you how many hundreds and perhaps thousands of expressions of support and encouragement that you have extended to me these past 2 years. I would love to tell you that this journey was a journey without stress, without heartache, and only filled with constant smooth sailing waters. While at times some of those adjectives were accurate, however, there were certainly many times of stormy waters, great challenges, and tremendous stress that at times took a serious toll on my mind and my body, soul, and even spirit. Yet in spite of this mixed bag of experiences, I can honestly say that serving each of you within this capacity has been the pinnacle and Mount Everest experience of my professional and public service to date. While I would never imply that I was perfect and flawless within every moment as mayor, however, I can state the following this evening with absolute integrity. I gave you everything that I had to give to the best of my ability. I gave cheerfully, willingly, and generously of my time, attention, talents, expertise, passion, and life experience to serve Puyallup in a way that joins those who have gone before us to continue making this wonderful community a great place to live, work, visit, play, and share lifelong memories together with those who you love. One is wise to recognize that any level of success can be found in part by those who have gone before us. Today in this room, there are many former mayors, and we are so grateful for the legacy that they have left for our city. And I'm going to call each of them by name, and when I do, please stand, and as they all stand, we'll give them a warm thank you. First, I'd like to call before us today Mayor Julie Dorr. If you could remain standing, just if you, yeah, thank you. Mayor John Palmer. Mayor John Hopkins. Mayor John Knutson. Mayor Rick Hansen. And Mayor Kathy Turner. And I won't say the best for last, but the special for last. I understand before us today and here with us today, we have our oldest living mayor, Mayor Ron Crow. Please join me in thanking him right here. Thank you, mayors, for being here tonight to celebrate the legacy of our city. Closing comments, and I hope that some of you know this. You can be seated. Thank you. I love this town. And I hope that that came across and continues to come across. And I love the people of this town. This sentiment of love for people even applies to those at times that we might find ourselves in disagreement on certain issues. Why, you might say, do I feel that sentiment towards even those? Because I believe in this thing called that all people are created equal and are endowed by their creator with certain unalienable rights, these being life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. I also hold truth to the motto of our National Pledge of Allegiance, which this body of elected officials opens up with every single council meeting and concludes with this statement that says that we are one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all, not some. Why else do I love this town and the people of this community? Because life is short. And as a very dear friend of mine once said, we're just passing through. You see, one day we'll take our last breath here on earth, and I'm convinced that those seemingly important community feuds won't really matter much when it's all said and done. So let us strive to end them well before that time comes. While I often fall short and don't always live out to perfection, nevertheless, my ongoing mission is to love God and to love people. 2 years ago, on January 11th, 2022, when I began my service as mayor, I stated the following words: And tonight, in my last words as mayor, I extend the same words to you in closing. May God bless you, your families, and your businesses. May God bless your dreams, your ambitions, and your futures. May God bless our city, the city of Puyallup, at a level of which we've never seen before in our 134-year history. May it be so. And now it gives me great honor to extend the transition of mayor as directed and adopted by our city council rules and procedures. The city of Puyallup is a council manager form of government. By state law, every 2 years at the first council meeting of the year, the city council shall select a member to be designated the mayor and thereby be the presiding officer at city council meetings and among other duties. The adopted city council rules of procedure provide that the city council member who has the highest number of continuous years of service be designated as mayor. With that in mind, I'm so excited to present to you our next mayor, and I have no doubt that with his bold courage and courageous leadership, along with the strong support of his fellow city council colleagues, great things are in our near future. Hence, please join me with the acknowledgement of our new mayor, Mayor Jim Castema. Thank you. Well done. Well done.
Well, thank you for that warm welcoming. I will try to be brief. First, I'd like to recognize my wife, Barbara, who's in the second row here, my companion, my support, and I want to acknowledge her. And then I want to give, yes. And I would like to give special thanks to Dean Johnson and his family for their devotion to the city over the last 8 years, and especially over the last 2 as mayor. It is a very stressful position, and I've observed him handle it with finesse. I also want to thank you, Dean, for your kind words about wishing the best for elected officials and that they rise to the highest standards and values. It reminded me of a story Ronald Reagan once told about a politician and a clergy member who die and go to heaven. And they're met by St. Peter's. And St. Peter, after formalities, says, "Now I'd like to show you where you reside." And he takes them to a room with a bed, a desk, and a chair. And he says, "This is where the clergy member will live." Okay. Then he brings the politician to a mansion. And this is manicured lawn, servants. And the politician says, "I'm not sure I really understand this. Why would clergy live there and I live here?" And St. Peter says, "Well, I don't think you understand heaven. You see, we have thousands of clergy members who come here every year, but you're the first politician we've ever seen." I'd like to thank the former elected officials from Puyallup. With your care, you have left us with a city that is fiscally sound and well supported by the community. It is with humility that we carry on this effort. You may not have a street, building, or park named after you, but your imprint is on every one of them. To the newly elected council members, thank you for entering the public arena. It takes courage to expose one's life to others, especially in such a high-tech, social media rich society that we are in today. I truly hope that this was one of the greatest experiences of your life. To the staff of Puyallup, I applaud your expertise and willingness to continuously improve your profession. Over my tenure, I have witnessed you embrace rigorous strategic planning, new methods of process management, and unparalleled customer service. And as a result, I have seen our approval rate from citizens rise to over 80%. Our goal should always be to provide the best value possible to the people of our city. In management, it's often said that you need the right people on the bus at the right time. I believe we have the right people to move forward. Finally, to you, that was a extremely warm welcoming. I very, very touched by that. It warms my heart to see that this evening. The foundation of any community is the values and culture that the citizens possess. I just finished a trip through Europe, visiting several cities, culminating with spending Christmas with all of my 5 children at my oldest daughter's home in Munich, Germany. In each city I visited, there were distinct differences. Some were clean, some were not. Some portrayed an obedience to laws, some did not. I am proud to be from a community that prioritizes families, neighborhoods, and a sense of tradition and of belonging. One part of my vision for Puyallup is that we have a thriving downtown core that serves as the commons for all of us to come together, make personal connections, and celebrate who we are. As technology continues to make us more isolated, I think this will become more important to the health of all of us. Look forward to new festival streets in downtown where people can walk, buy from shops and food vendors. Look forward to higher density residential buildings that provide new housing options for the young and old alike and bring a new vibrancy downtown. Done right, the future of downtown will be stunning. A healthy vision for Puyallup also includes strong neighborhoods. While the downtown may be the core of Puyallup, its bedrock is our neighborhoods. It's where we grow up. It's where we raise our families and spend most of our twilight years. It is imperative that each and every neighborhood, every park, every street be safe, and children and families walk without fear of harm. We owe this to our children and future generations. You have my promise that I will continue to provide our police officers and neighborhood watch programs with the necessary resources to maintain and improve safety throughout the city. Finally, no vision is complete without a focus on economic development. Without good jobs, we cannot support our families, gain a sense of independence, and have the amenities we desire. I am committed to attracting new businesses, supporting existing ones, and creating an environment that fosters innovation and growth. Now, I said at the beginning that this would be a brief speech, but if you'll indulge me, let me conclude by telling you a little bit about my background that I believe illustrates my view as my role as a mayor. I grew up in Puyallup in the 1960s and the 70s. I picked strawberries, blueberries. I played Little League sports. I climbed mountains. I skied. After graduating from Puyallup High School, however, I distinctly remember thinking the only place I wanted to see Puyallup was in my rearview mirror. From here, I set out and I went to California and I received my college degree there. Not content to settle down, I decided I would travel around the world. One of those stops landed me in Israel in 1983 in the middle of the Lebanese War. I can tell you that on the morning of October 23rd, I was woken up in my sleeping bag by a loud explosion in the north. 241 Marines had been blown up in the barracks that night in Beirut. From that point on, the USS New Jersey battleship plummeted that area with artillery for the foreseeable future. From there, I continued my venture, kind of seeking out the most desirable places in Europe. I went on to Yugoslavia, which at the time was a communist country, and not quite understanding the protocols, I was eventually arrested. I was put in jail on suspicion of spying for the United States. And as I was sitting in my cell, a lot of thoughts were going through a 23-year-old man's mind. But as I was sitting there with a soldier in front of me with a gun on me, I thought to myself, maybe Puyallup isn't so bad. I actually came back to Puyallup. I bought the very home I grew up in. I have lived there for a good part of my 64 years. And I tell you this story because today our children have choices that they can live anywhere in the world. There are so many opportunities for them to live in different countries, especially in this high-tech world. I believe that our task as leaders is to create a city that they will eventually want to come back to. I look forward to joining each and every one of you in that effort. Thank you very much. With that, my first duty as mayor is to hold nomination for deputy mayor. Having stated that, do I have a nomination?
You do?
Councilmember Whitting, do we have a second?
I would like to nominate. Actually, let me say a few words. I too have been honored to serve the city of Puyallup for the last 4 years as a council member, the last 2 as deputy mayor, and the last 2 as Mayor Johnson's wingman. I look forward to continuing to serve you for the next 4 years as a council member. And as my first official act, I'd like to place the name of Dennis King in nomination to be our next deputy mayor.
I'll second that.
And as I just like to add that I'm excited to serve along with our new mayor. He's enunciated a pretty clear vision that I think will serve us well. And I think the team of King and Castema will serve our city well. Thank you.
Are there any further nominating speeches? Hearing none, I'll go ahead and close discussion on this and we'll have a vote. All those in favor, Councilmember Dennis King, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
The vote, I believe, is unanimous. Congratulations. With that, Councilmember Deputy Mayor King, if you'd like to make some remarks.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor Castema. Excuse me. Got to get used to that. Esteemed council members and residents of the city of Puyallup, I'm here before you today deeply honored and humbled as I accept this position of deputy mayor for our beloved city of Puyallup. First, I'd like to thank my wife, Melinda, my daughter, Kenzie, who is here tonight, with my son, DK, who is here supporting me. I'd also like to say thank you to my mother, Carol, who is here tonight as well. Along with my sister, Shelly, it truly means a lot that you are all here supporting me. Who would have thought I'd be deputy mayor? This great city who has given our family so much opportunity, and I am truly honored. This appointment is not just a title to me, it is a profound responsibility and commitment to serve our community with dedication and integrity. Puyallup is more than just a place on the map. It's our home. It's a vibrant fabric woven with the lives and dreams of each person who calls it their own. As deputy mayor, I promise to listen actively, act thoughtfully, and lead proactively, ensuring that our city continues to flourish, not just economically, but as a close-knit community that values each and every member. Together, let's build a future for Puyallup that we can all be proud of. A future that resonates with the spirit of unity, progress, and tremendous growth for small business here in this great city we call home. Thank you for this incredible opportunity. Puyallup, let's get to work. Thank you.
Thank you for those comments, Deputy Mayor King. And with that, at this point, we're going to take a 15-minute break. And this can be a time when we can come together and take photographs with each other and celebrate. Then we will come back and we'll get down to the business of the council meeting we have before us this evening. You can stay if you would like, or you are not, of course, obligated to do so. So again, thank you for being here this evening. Okay. There you go. Okay, the Puyallup City Council meeting will now reconvene. Before we go on with the agenda as stated, where we will go into the consideration of minutes, I'd just like to acknowledge someone in the audience who made themselves known to me, and I'd like to have her come forward, and that is Kimberly Wankula. And she is the recipient of Miss Africa Washington State. I'd like her to have come forward, tell us a little bit about her organization. It's not often we are honored with such presence, so please, Kimberly.
Hello, everybody. My name is Kimberly Wanklo. I am Miss Africa Washington State 2023 as of September 2023, and it is nice to meet you. Haven't met you yet. My cause is to build homes for young girls who are victims of sex trafficking and prostitution. And this goal happened when I did ministry school in 2017, and we got the chance to go to LA. Went to Skid Row, and this place is basically a park where young people, young girls, women, and men are sleeping, park benches, floor, wherever they can find comfort, and they stay there months, years, winter, summer, wherever like the season is. And I walked around, talked to them, just heard their stories, the abuse, the pain, everything they went through, and it broke my heart completely. And from there, my platform was born, to be able to help them. I want to start here in Puyallup, in Seattle, and just rent a building. That's my plan for right now, where I can put the homeless people who have gone through this sex trafficking, hear their stories, and just provide them with beds, a bathroom, just, the basic necessities of life. And from there, I want to make it global, to build that home in every single country in the world, because nothing is off limits. I'm only here once, and I want to do what I can while on this earth. So I would love any help possible, and would love to talk to any one of you who can help me with this, because I believe that I can't do everything, but I can do something. And this is my contribution to the world. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Kimberly. With that, we will now move on to the next item on the agenda, which is the consideration of minutes. And that includes the approval of November 21st and December 5th, both of 2023. Do I hear a motion to approve?
Move approval.
Second.
There's been a motion and there's a second. All those in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Okay, we will now move on to citizen comments. Public comments will be taken at this time in person. Our city clerk will read kind of the guidelines regarding that, and then I will call on individuals who've signed up. Please go ahead and make sure that if you do have comments, that you fill them out with just your name and then your subject matter you'd like to speak on, preferably, your address so we know what area of Puyallup you're coming from, and then I'll put you in the list. So with that, City Clerk, please read.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. This part of the meeting is for general citizen comments. Please reserve any public hearing testimony to that section of the agenda. The mayor will call on those who have provided their names in advance. Then the mayor will call for other citizens who wish to speak. For the record, please state your name and address or city council district in which you reside. Please direct your comments to the council as a whole, not individual council members. All comments are limited to 3 minutes. The clerk will provide verbal notice when only 30 seconds remain. As a reminder, this portion of the meeting is council's opportunity to hear from the community and not a time to engage in debate. Lastly, per state law, this public comment period cannot be used to speak in support of or in opposition to a ballot measure or individual candidacy, and no such comments will be allowed.
Okay, the 3-minute clock will be displayed on the screen behind us, correct?
Yes, sir.
Okay, with that, let's have our first guest come forward. John Hopkins, please.
John Hopkins, District 1. First, I want to congratulate our new mayor. Thank you very much. I think you'll serve us very well. You bring a wealth of experience. and congratulations to our deputy mayor. And more than that, especially to our new council members. You know, both of you bring incredible experience. You know, you both served the community really well. And I think that will be a refreshment, you might say. It's always good to change, get new ideas. So I think you'll serve us very well. Thank you very much for doing this. I don't know if you'd call it advice, but I have two words that I think are pretty important, and that's buy in, buy in. And that's something that can define how well you do and or how badly you do in the eyes of the public. If you look right behind us, we have a library that was voted on. There was a buy-in for that, and people love it to this day and really support the council that put it forth. You know, at the same time period, we had the pavilion. I remember countless meetings in the pavilion, or not in the pavilion, but before the pavilion was built, you know, for the design of it, there was a buy-in for that too. And it was built with LTEC money. It was a good project, and it's a crown jewel. On the other hand, when things weren't, when the public wasn't involved, things didn't go quite as well. That particular council ended up getting replaced. And that's not a testament as to the buildings, it's a testament as to how important the buy-in is. Now, it's been very difficult for a lot of you to get a buy-in with COVID. That's been very challenging. And so I will point out that you can do this and you have done that. And a particularly good example is the downtown streetscape. There's been a lot of meetings about that. And out of those meetings, you get ideas, you know, and the Mika
30 seconds.
Festival Street is an example of that. If you do things that way, the public will love you for it and great ideas will come about and your popularity will remain intact. So once again, congratulations and thank you.
Thank you for those comments. Edward Oscar.
That's key. My friends have a hard time pronouncing that.
Sorry, Edward.
On behalf of the Washington State Pickleball Association, its committee members, and over 5,000 pickleball players and thousands more who's not part of that association, we welcome the new mayor, deputy mayor, the new council members, and we just want to say that we will work together with you to build that dream of implementing a nice community there in the city, not just pickleball, but it has a lot to do with families. It has a lot to do with children, kids growing up, learning sportsmanship, learning how to get together, learning how to deal with conflicts, learn how to find win-win situations in difficult, challenging circumstances. So again, we just want to welcome you. I pray the blessings of God upon each and every one of you and your family, and let him shine his favor upon you and your family over this new year, 2024. Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you. Next individual is Paul Romich.
Thank you, Mayor Castema. Oh, thank you, Mayor Johnson's almost reflexive to me. So this is a new experience. And welcome to all our new council members, and congratulations on re-election to those that were re-elected. My name is Paul Romich. I live in District 1. You know, talking about your vision for Puyallup, Mayor Castema, you know, it starts at the comprehensive plan, and you know we'll have a bit of discussion on that tonight. And the presentation will go over a couple alternatives, but they're not to be just chosen between, but to be modified for study. And if the presentation is similar to the Planning Commission, there's focus on job growth and housing growth, but something we should also keep in mind is quality of life growth. right? I've previously spoken on, when we look at the maps and survey results from the comprehensive plan survey, and those outputs, if we were to lay them over top of each other, we can see that there's a clear lack of services and amenities in the southeast quadrant of our city. And so, one of these plans more than the other supports the, one of these alternatives, I should say, supports developing and improving upon that quality of life, by enabling services and goods to be, and jobs and amenities to be located closer to home for those individuals, and then for those residents. So, take that kind of quality of life mindset into, kind of this evening's activities, encourage that, because, where can we enable growth to improve quality of life? What are we missing as a city, that currently that can, improve, future residents' day-to-day life? So I think that is something we should look forward to and, strengthen our neighborhoods individually. And that's all I have for tonight. Thank you.
Thank you, Paul, for your comments. Next, we're honored to have a former mayor, former council member, John.
Thank you. And congratulations, Mayor Kastner. Thank you, Deputy Mayor King, Councilmember Alder, Councilmember Gilliam. It's good to see you all, and my good former friends, Councilmember Whitting and Johnson, and of course, Julie Dorr. So great to see your smiling faces up there. Looking forward to your adventures ahead in serving our great city. And it's nice to see a wonderful kind of celebration early as part of this meeting. So thank you for all that. I did want to spend a few moments talking about the draft environmental impact statement for the 7 proposed warehouses off Shaw Road in the historic farmland area known as the Knutson Project. And the first thing I want to say is I just want to thank the enormous amount of work that staff has put in to develop this draft environmental impact statement. It was a lot of work. And I just, as a citizen of Puyallup, I'm just very appreciative for the work that the Puyallup staff has done on this. Just to remind everybody, the purpose of an environmental impact statement is to look at the impacts and to develop mitigation to address those impacts. That's it in a nutshell. And so that's what this is doing. This EIS has the proposed alternative, which is 7 warehouses, but then it has 2 other alternatives. And draw the public's attention to alternative 2, which includes most of the mitigation that's proposed. So take a look at that. And the public has opportunity to engage in this starting this week. On Thursday, there's a Zoom meeting from 6 to 8, I believe, and the link, if you can get it off the website to get information about this. And then next Wednesday at Pierce College, there'll be an open house and there'll be the opportunity to learn more about the project and also provide input. And you can get input into this all the way through March 15th online. And just in closing, I just want to remind, this is in a county. However, it is part of our annexation area.
30 seconds.
We have a land use plan for this. And that land use plan called for a balanced development out here, including some farmland protection. Unfortunately, the developer did not follow our plan, chose to try to go through the county without consideration of our plan. Well, we did this EIS to address that issue, and we went all the way to Supreme Court to get the right to do it. And so we are finally here today in this process. So I want everybody
Mr.
to,
Mayor, the speaker has reached 3 minutes.
engage in this process and look forward to it unfolding. Thank you.
Thank you. Next individual is Bud Metzger.
Bud Metzger, good evening. Welcome to the new council members. Boy, now to the business of the city, which is what I think most of us I want to speak to. Firstly, with respect to what John Palmer said, is that area of the city, and in areas in the city has really bad air quality at different times during the year. And we spent years negotiating with the representative of that property, developing a plan that was acceptable to the city. It took us so long to get to that agreement that we had everyone sign the map when they were done. Immediately, the owner of that property said that person that represented him didn't represent him anymore. So this is a long process. This is a really important area, and there's already health concerns in Puyallup for air quality at different times of the year that can significantly affect our families and everybody that breathes air in this community. Secondly, I want to talk to, we have a lot of demands on our city. Our city keeps building. There's more people here. There's more for our staff to do. We're understaffed in a number of departments. You just got another park, okay? LaBelle property. How many park staff are you going to approve? Have you ever taken care of wetlands? What happens if, what kind of park are you going to design? Is a kid going to be able to fall off the walkway into the puddle? I mean, these are significant things that need to be addressed properly and safely, because just adding doesn't mean we take care of them, and to dump it on staff is rough. I mean, our police department and our public works department, when we annexed West Hills, you think we dramatically increased our capacity as staff? I don't think so. So the departments need support, not just words, because we already aren't taking care of our police department. To tell you the truth, not with respect to the new council members, but our council has failed to find agreement to build a new police station and fix it so that the facilities they deserve.
30
Talk
seconds.
is cheap. We need to find action, because leaving them that way, we're going to end up with no police department. It's rough. We've been around for a long time, and I hate to see us fall by the wayside with just words and not success. Thank you.
Thank you. Next individual is Chris Chisholm.
Thank you, Mayor. Welcome, and Deputy Mayor and the new council members. I'm really excited to see you. Chris Chisholm, District 2. I'm a District 2 resident, business owner, and I guess I've become sort of a advocate for effective and efficient government. And I just want to start, I always end up coming up to council quite a bit. And so I just want to start by really encouraging this new council to focus on effective democratic process. Kind of reflects a little bit what former Mayor Hopkins mentioned about buy-in. And it means not doing some things that have been done in the past, such as making proposals based on assumptions instead of starting at the beginning with commissioning real studies on feasibility and what's actually needed, as well as neighborhood meetings, not just expecting people to show up here because they really haven't been. We need to go out to the neighborhoods. You need to include us, get those ideas that Mayor Hopkins had mentioned about, to get real public feedback, outside of this bubble. In other words, you need to vet your big ideas by hiring independent research firms to find out what's really needed and feasible, then utilize our volunteer boards and commissions. They're not utilized a lot when some big ideas come up. And then, conduct regular neighborhood brainstorm meetings. I would start today, by scheduling one early this year and having them be annual. And if there are big proposals, schedule another one later in the year in each district. I don't know. I don't understand why there aren't neighborhood meetings every year near the beginning of your year, like a retreat time in every neighborhood, making people feel included, getting those ideas. Mistake past council have made in putting big proposals on an agenda and expecting people to show up here and then trying to sell them to us. That just doesn't work. Makes us feel disempowered. You know, one of the examples of proceeding the wrong way is last thing that happened in the December council meeting when the flock safety program was approved on a consent agenda without any public discussion about its effectiveness or privacy issues. The program may or may not be a good one, but it doesn't matter now. Residents feel disempowered by the city's unilateral decision to surveil us rather
30
than
seconds.
first bringing the idea to neighborhood meetings and vetting any study showing how much it may work or may abuse personal privacy. None of those cameras should be installed before a true public process takes place. In a functional democracy, it's all about inclusive process before pushing proposals. Encourage the new council to set a precedent now, with neighborhood meetings. And, I'm not super confident, sadly, a lot of us feel that way, but I am hopeful and
Mr.
I'm
Mayor,
ready
the
to
speaker has
help.
reached 3 minutes.
Thank you.
Thank you. With that, I will go ahead and if anyone else would like to comment, who has not filled out one of these forms, please come forward. Okay, hearing none and seeing none, we'll go ahead and move on to the next item on the agenda. And by the way, I want to thank all the citizens who commented this evening. It does take courage to come forward and to express your views, and I appreciate you doing that. We will now move on to the next item on the agenda, which is the consent agenda. I would ask for a motion to approve this agenda, or if there is any member who would like to have an item removed and moved to another portion of the agenda, please speak now.
Motion to approve.
Second.
Okay, there's been a motion to approve and second. All those in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Okay, we will now move on to the next item on the agenda, number 5, dealing with ordinances. Second reading of 2 ordinances granting franchise agreements to Ziply Fiber. Staff, would you like to speak to this?
I have nothing additional to say from the last meeting, so unless you have questions, I will pass on the opportunity.
Just to review first reading, that vote was unanimous, correct?
Yes.
Okay. With that, do I hear a motion to pass this on a second reading?
Move approval.
Second? Do I hear a second?
Second.
Okay, there's been a motion to approve and second. All those in favor of passing this on a second reading indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay? Okay, city clerk, can we do a roll call?
Yes, Mr. Mayor. Councilmember Adler,
Aye.
Councilmember Johnson,
Aye.
Deputy Mayor King,
Aye.
Councilmember Gilliam,
Aye.
Councilmember Whitting,
Aye.
Councilmember Dorr,
Aye.
Mayor Castema.
Aye. Next issue on the agenda is number 6, resolutions. We have a resolution authorizing the circulation of the Pika Borner annexation petition. Staff, could you give us a review, please?
Right. Hello, my name is Nabila Comstock. I'm a planner with the city of Puyallup. Tonight, I will be giving a presentation on the Pika Borner annexation proposal for council's consideration. Oh, sorry. Okay. So before I get started, I just want to brief the council on their considerations for tonight. The decisions that council can make are to accept the annexation as proposed and move forward to the 60% petition stage. They can reject the annexation as proposed, of which an appeal by the petitioners is not allowed, or they can geographically modify the annexation area. The accepting or modification of the annexation requires the simultaneous adoption of the zoning regulations laid forth by the comprehensive plan, which is for moderate density residential in this area. And it also requires the assumption that all or a portion of the existing city indebtedness would go to citizens as well, meaning that any city debts that result in taxes would then apply to these lots once they are officially annexed. So for the annexation area, the proposed Pika Borner annexation area includes 2 parcels located within the city's urban growth area. They are located along 56th Street East and total about 10 acres in size. They are the parcels highlighted in turquoise on the screen. They are located south of River Road and directly east of Clarks Creek. As they currently exist, the two parcels that are part of this proposed annexation are currently used for farming and agriculture. The land use designation for this area, as determined by the city's comp plan, is for moderate density residential. The land use designation for abutting properties to the north, east, and west is also moderate density residential, while the designation for properties to the south is low density residential. So the annexation process consists of a 10% petition being submitted to the city in order to initiate the annexation. This initiation was brought to council on December 5th of 2023, and we are here tonight to get council's decision. They can accept, reject, or modify the proposal for the annexation of the Pica-Borner area. A rejection of the proposal would result in no further action, while accepting or modifying the proposal would result in moving forward to gathering signatures for a petition for annexation, which would require 60% of the assessed value of the included properties to sign on and to be able to move forward. So that is all for my presentation tonight. Please let me know if you have any questions and I'll do my best to answer them. The applicant's representative is also in the audience tonight as well. Yeah, that's all for me, and I'll put the decisions on the screen again for you guys.
Okay, thank you, staff. Are there any questions of staff? Councilmember Johnson.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Mayor. So Nabilia, I was wondering, so on the process of accept or modify, reject, let's just say, first of all, is there a course of action for council tonight? Are we having taken this course? So we need to pick one of these. Okay. So, let's assume, or project that we accept. Let's say we accept, what is the process then? So do you have to go out to the property owners within that region, or only the property owners that are colored in the turquoise? The
Yeah.
neighboring ones need to give it in?
No, just the two property owners who signed up to petition their.
So
properties.
60%, just,
So it's 100%.
you got to have both of them on board.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. So it's pretty narrow voting. Basically, the two property owners would vote.
Yes.
Obviously, they must want it, otherwise they wouldn't have brought it. So I imagine that we'll get 100% on that. Okay, that's helpful to know. And all I would think is that I know the history of this particular farm certainly has been attributed to Puyallup. It may not be in the Puyallup city limits, but it certainly seems to be historically classified as Puyallup. And so it would make sense to me to see this be annexed into the official city of Puyallup, because I think historically nobody else knows that it's not dotted line. And so I would be hard pressed to reject this from my perspective on why we wouldn't do that, especially if they're interested in being part of our city limits. So that would be my comments on that. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Councilmember Johnson. Councilmember Dorr.
Thank you. So if we move forward with this tonight, we still have the opportunity to get additional information from staff as far as infrastructure needs, what that looks like, what the requirements are, so that today is just moving the process along. It is not a final decision. I'm basically speaking for you. I'm trying to clarify that. So we can move this along and have staff come back to us with information about what we would be taking on. Thank you.
Could you clarify that just a little bit? In other words, we will be accepting the fact that going forward for annexation, correct?
Yes, so the next step, if council accepts the proposed area as it is with the two parcels, the petition would go out to the property owners involved, which is just the two parcels. They would sign on. And then I believe the next step would be to schedule a public hearing. Okay, we'd come back with more information first.
And then is the actual final annexation, is that determined by?
Okay, council does adopt an ordinance.
Okay, fine. Thank you for that clarification. Councilmember, or excuse me, I will refer to our legal counsel, Joe Beck.
Yeah, I just wanted to give a little bit more flesh on the bones there. it may have to go to boundary review board if somebody invokes boundary review. So that's a step. And it does have to come back for council. There's no final decision with passing this resolution. You still will have the opportunity after we receive the 60% petition to reject or accept. The only thing you will set in stone tonight is the boundaries of this annexation. So if you choose to accept it, that is what you will have to vote on in the end. You will not be able to expand or retract these boundaries at a later date after you make your decision tonight. But it will, once you make the decision to accept, it will come back for public hearing and for a final decision. Possibly after boundary review board, or you may provide a provisional acceptance based on whether the boundary, going to the boundary review board and getting approval by the boundary review. A couple ways that could go, but ultimately you do have the final say on whether it's accepted.
Councilmember Johnson, your light is on. Would you like to ask a question?
Yes, Mr. Mayor. Follow-up question. So I was looking at these parcels in the turquoise, and city limits is where the yellow is. Is that correct? So they're just on the edge of city limits. Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay. Do the property owners own any additional, just more curiosity, property around that, or just strictly located in those two areas and they're just isolating these two parcels that they're wanting annexed in, or do they have adjoining property that they own, but they're not annexing in?
My understanding is that it's just these two.
Just these two parcels, okay. Would it typically be protocol to, I mean, do you think some of the neighboring properties are aware of that, that they're wanting to be annexed in, or is that pretty just personal in terms of awareness?
So there wasn't any outreach done by the property owners who filed or applied for this. So it might be a hit or miss whether or not the surrounding property owners do know about it.
Yeah.
Staff doesn't usually do outreach for this.
Yeah, sure. No problem. Just curious in the process. And then let's just hypothetically say this moves forward and the process confirms and they're annexed in with this little deal. This may trigger some domino effects. You may find some other landowners who may want to approach and say, we want to tag on this because of course Stewart's Crossing is bordering there.
Mhm.
And we certainly saw some development of expanded housing in that area. So you may find that other parcels may want to join in that when they hear or are aware of that. So, okay, thank you for that. Appreciate that.
Councilmember Dorr.
Thank you. Joe, I just had a quick question. So boundary review, if somebody invokes that, I don't know if that's the right word. Does the county council have a role here or is it just boundary review?
Just boundary review board,
Okay.
if invoked.
Thank you.
The mayor feels as if the discussion is concluded. Am I correct?
Yes.
If so, would someone like to make a motion moving this forward?
I'd like to make a motion that we move forward to this proposed item. What is it? Item 6A in the resolution authorizing the circulation of the PICA, is it border annexation petition resolution to move forward for next steps.
Councilmember Whitting.
Sorry I'm so late on the gun here. I've been sitting here pondering this and turn on your light. Sorry, I've been pondering this and it's taken me a while for my mental gears to really engage here. First off, I'd like to mention that the city boundaries, if you look at the exhibit B, the city boundaries, I believe, are the darker yellow and not the lighter yellow. Is that correct?
So the yellow on the screen up here is all the urban growth area. If you look to the southeast on the screen, where like Stewart Crossing is, sorry, I hope everybody can see that. That is city limits. So the yellow around that is all urban growth area and outside of city limits.
So just to clarify, the only part of this plot that it actually adjoins the city is that it adjoins that black darker area. Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay, and these couple of plots are, I believe that's a manufactured home park to the east.
To the east, where I've labeled 69th Avenue Court East, that is a mobile home park running north. And then north and to the east as well is also a mobile home park.
Yes, and then on the west side, we've got Clark's Creek, so that there's a boundary there as well. So I'm just, we've got the area north of them. And before we approve this, I'm wondering whether or not we want to have some outreach to the adjoining areas that will be impacted by this, and that area directly to the north. There may be some traffic implications and so forth that could have some, if those parcels are developed as moderate density, that there's going to be some impacts on the neighbors.
Yeah, so if council would like staff to go and do some outreach, they could reject the proposal and we could come back probably in 6 to 8 weeks with after having done a mailer, receiving some responses and seeing if any other property owners are interested in joining this annexation. So that is an option.
So I don't feel terribly strongly about this, but it would seem like it'd be a prudent task to kind of see how the whether or not there's a bigger chunk here that we can save ourselves some time and effort. I defer to my colleagues' opinions on this. Thank you.
Councilmember Johnson.
Mr. Mayor, I heard Councilmember Whitting's suggestion. However, there is a motion on the table to accept it as stated. So unless somebody wants to not second that or defeat this, there's already a motion to move forward with the process it is now. So I'd like to ask for a second if anyone would like to go along with my motion.
Do I hear a second?
I'll second it.
There's a second from Councilmember Dorr. So the motion is on the table. So we'll discuss this specifically. Councilmember Whitting, would you like to address it further?
I think my comments I've already expressed my thoughts on this. I don't have much more to add. I'm coming at this without having done as much homework as I might have liked to, and I guess we'll have a chance to put in some homework before our next approach. So I'm good.
Okay. Any further comments by council members? If not, we'll go for a vote. Oh, excuse me, Councilmember Johnson.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So I guess I'm a little concerned with the recommendation to do outreach only because when I asked the question, it wasn't consistent that we normally do that. So I feel like this is kind of asking for a special exception. And I question if it's meddling potential for a kind of break protocol of a normal process of annexation. So I'm concerned with that proposal. I think good intent, but I'm concerned that it kind of goes outside of the process that these applicants have submitted. And then to throw a curveball in like that, it seems like it would question to me that it would go outside of a due process. So is that a fair assessment that this would be not in concert with what the intent of the initial applicant was?
I can address that. I think where Ms. Comstock was going with that is if council's direction is to do that, staff will take direction from council.
Gotcha.
So it's not really as wrong or right. It's we take direction from you, and if you adopt the resolution, we will not do that. But if you don't, and you give us direction, we
Gotcha.
will. So that's what she meant by that.
Yeah. Thank you. Well, I'd like to see us move forward without that, but that's fine. That's all the comments I had, Mr. Mayor.
Okay, thank you. Councilmember Dorr.
Thank you. So I'm supportive of moving this forward, but I do have questions. I mean, clearly the infrastructure is a big deal and the traffic impacts that my colleague mentioned. So when staff does bring this back, I would like an assessment of what those impacts are to the neighborhood and what the infrastructure, what it has now and what is it going to cost us if we go ahead and approve this. I apologize. I'm looking at Katie. I have no idea.
That's okay.
So to both of you I'm supportive of it with that caveat. Thanks. Thank you.
Any further comments? I will just add that I will support the measure as proposed. All those in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, nay. The motion will move forward.
Mr. Mayor, point of clarity,
Yes,
because I've only heard two councilors state that they wanted to have the outreach, and I think to give direction, it would need to be more than two. So my understanding is because we only had two that mentioned that we're not going to be doing outreach. That's not clear direction. Is that correct?
that's correct.
Thank
There
you.
was a motion on the floor that just made the motion to move forward as it is presented to us. There was additional comments to have additional outreach, but that would have required an amendment. And it was not made, was not seconded to that motion.
Thank you.
So it is as you originally stated.
Thank you. Just wanted to get point of clarity so there's no confusion. Thank you.
You're welcome. Now let's move on to number 7, consideration and request, Puyallup 2044 land use alternatives. Katie Baker, you're going to give us a presentation, please.
Thank you, Mayor Castema, members of council, Katie Baker, planning manager. I'm here before you tonight with our consultant representative, project manager, Alex Stupi. He'll be doing the bulk of the work, giving the presentation, but I just wanted to give him a brief introduction. So we're here before you tonight to discuss the land use alternatives for further study in our comprehensive plan update work, Puyallup 2044. We were most recently before you back in November of 2023 with an update on public engagement and the market analysis work that was being completed at that time. Tonight, you'll hear more about the proposed draft alternatives for consideration as we go into our environmental impact study. As a reminder, you're not approving any changes to the land use map or taking any formal action tonight. However, we are looking for your direction that these maps are generally the right concepts to study. That resulting information that we get from that study will help inform the changes that you do eventually adopt as part of the comprehensive plan update. The engagement work that you heard about in November, the market analysis, as well as staff input and planning commission input has all gone into development of these alternatives. So with that, I will turn it over to Alex to walk through the land use alternatives.
Thank you, Katie, and thank you for the introduction. Once again, my name is Alex Stupi. I'm a principal with MIG. We are the consultant lead for this project, along with Fair and Peers, Parametrics, and Community Attributes who are doing the market analysis. So tonight I'm going to step through the land use alternatives. You've seen some of these slides from the engagement presentation that we did back in November. I bring those back in because they are foundational to the alternatives that we're going to be discussing this evening. So with that, I'll step through this. If you have any questions, feel free to ask me any questions about that. I'll do my best to answer them as we go through. All right, so we will talk briefly tonight about progress to date and growth targets, why we're here, what we have to accommodate within the city limits and urban growth area, that foundational element of community engagement in this first phase of work to be able to develop the alternatives. And then we'll step through the alternatives themselves and the assumptions that we have under each one of those to meet the growth targets set for the city. So with that, in terms of outcomes, we are on a timeline within this first tier of cities and jurisdictions in Washington. We have to have the environmental impact statement, both draft and final, as well as the comprehensive plan adopted by the end of 2024. So it sounds like a long time. It's about 350 or so days there. There is a lot of work to begin both getting into the environmental analysis, which we need these alternatives to be able to do that, but also to complete additional community engagement on both the trade-offs within each of these alternatives, but ultimately how we develop our draft and final future land use maps that forms the comprehensive plan itself. So as Katie mentioned tonight, we're not asking for a decision on an alternative. We're just asking for your feedback within these alternatives to make sure that we understand your perspectives, where we're coming, and then ultimately get into the environmental review. That will go pretty much through now into the spring, and then ultimately get into the draft comprehensive plan in summer and fall with the final environmental impact statement. So a lot of work to do, but this is an important meeting tonight in that we need your direction to make sure that we're on the right path moving forward for that. Just as a reminder on schedule, we have completed a a number of different elements. We've completed an existing conditions analysis. We've done a market analysis, which we'll actually be presenting in a couple weeks to you on the findings for that. That's important because that sets the tone for your regional centers for downtown and South Hill, understanding how growth could occur, how the markets are, and then ultimately getting to those policy considerations for both land use, economic development, and other implementation strategies. So we've done a lot of work this past several months, including some significant public engagement to get us here for the alternatives. Right now, we're looking at draft future land use classifications, how those are aligned with each of the alternatives, whether or not we want to look at changes for analysis as a part of the environmental impact statement, but really focusing on those maps and where that growth occurs within the city for both population as well as employment. In the spring, coming into next, say, 2 to 3 months, we will be doing another round of engagement once we get more analysis done. So transportation, public facilities, environmental. We need these alternatives to do that work and to be able to give the community enough information to make decisions about, where do we focus? How do we start to align specific issues or themes that we need to consider for the update to the comp plan? So a lot to do in the next few months. That sets us up for summer and fall to actually get into the comprehensive plan itself, and then come back to you for discussion and eventually hearings and hopefully approval. So with that, just kind of how SEPA, which is the State Environmental Policy Act, relates to the comprehensive plan process. This is called a non-project environmental impact statement. So it's not project specific. We're not looking at a specific piece of property in the city. There was a discussion about an EIS actually earlier in the meeting tonight. We were looking at more the general effects of what these various alternatives might mean in terms of growth and development within the city. So how we do that is essentially, start to gather input, develop baseline analyses, which we've done. We have the alternatives in front of you tonight, and then we step into those specific processes, which includes updating your transportation plan, looking at critical areas, as well as other elements that are required within the state environmental requirements. We'll be doing both a draft environmental impact statement, which will come to you late spring, early summer, and then a final environmental impact statement, which is essentially the preferred future land use map moving forward. And that's late summer, early fall. So that's kind of how that fits in with that. It evaluates kind of the physical impacts as well as looks at what potential mitigation might be. And for non-project EISs, that's a lot of policy and a lot of direction. All right, so just for a bit of context. So our growth targets, which are allocated through a process with Pierce County, have essentially given us these both employment and population targets that we have to meet over the next 20 years. That's why we're calling it Puyallup 2044. We update the comprehensive plan every 10 years, but the growth targets are for 20 years. So that's what we have to shoot for. And we're looking for about 7,500 housing units and about just over 14,000, almost 15,000 jobs. That sounds like a lot, but actually within your existing capacity in the city, that 7,500 housing units, we generally have enough land, both vacant and redevelopable land, that could potentially accommodate that population growth. The challenge is your jobs. That's where we have to be a little bit more creative and think about how that applies. And also what the community has told us in terms of what types of land use and growth patterns they want to see. So keep those in mind. That's where we're shooting for. Just some more context, you have an existing future land use map. This is the one within your existing comprehensive plan. There's 15 or so colors that designate different types of future land use classifications, both within your city limits and within the urban growth area. This is a map that is being reviewed, and as a part of the environmental analysis, this is where we start to talk about the alternatives and how we grow potentially in different ways. So again, we're not changing this through the draft environmental impact statement. We're looking at different ways to be able to accommodate jobs and housing, or excuse me, jobs and housing on this map. The future land use map is implemented through zoning. So future land use is about what happens tomorrow. It's what our vision is. Zoning is about what's allowed today. So whatever changes we make on the future land use map could have implications for what zoning is in the future. Zoning does not have to be completed by the end of 2024. We have about 6 months to be able to meet both middle housing and other zone changes within kind of the context of the comp plan. We'll talk a lot more about that in the future, but just for now, so you know kind of what we're working with here. As a part of this, the county, Pierce County does buildable lands inventory. They look at all of the parcels within the city limits in the urban growth area. They identify what's developed, what's vacant, what's potentially redevelopable. They also look at things like critical areas, steep slopes, wetlands, other types of limitations that, you know, essentially wouldn't allow develop on a parcel or on a portion of a parcel. As an outcome of that, after they've done this buildable lands inventory, that's where you start to get those allocations for population and employment. So those numbers somewhat reflect what the buildable lands inventory is showing. So we've used this as a base to start to think about what the alternatives might be that we want to evaluate. All right, so with that context and that baseline information, we layer on how we think about, you know, the future. You know, this is a big question. You know, it's next 20 years. Your kids or grandkids, you know, are 20 years older. They may have kids themselves. They may, you know, live with you now, but they're moved out and they're living someplace else in Puyallup. So it's a big change. And we did a number of different components. Some was in person. City staff were at a number of different pop-up events like Meeker Days, Farmers Market, concerts in the park, just to get input on, you know, what we should be covering, you know, vision elements, what they want to see. And then we took that and had a large public event where we started to talk about what those alternatives might be. Actually having community members place growth in different locations on the city and within the city to see how, you know, you would allocate growth there to accommodate those targets. We were challenged a little bit because I believe that was also the rodeo. So timing is tough in the fall. We did have a large online survey where we got a lot of responses. So while we had the in-person was a bit light, our online survey was quite robust. And so we feel comfortable, and I'll show that in just a moment, quite comfortable with what we're hearing, at least for these elements. And we do have a community advisory group. We talked to this with them as well. And so they've also provided their input on the alternatives. So it's a bunch of different pieces. It's some technical, it's some public meetings, it's some online events. This is a screenshot of every house here is somebody who responded to the survey. So we had about, which is great. It's all over the city, which is great. So we got a good geographic representation. We had about 1,500 unsubmitted surveys, which I want to clarify what that means. That just means they didn't click submit at the end. So every time you click through and you answer a question within that survey, it's automatically incorporated into the feed. A lot of people don't like to answer the demographic questions at the end, but we had a number of pins, many hundreds of pins that were collected through those unsubmitted surveys. So even though it says 1,500 unsubmitted, it's not 1,500 with no information provided. And then we had about 350 who went all the way through the end to click. So the information was robust, and it was also, I think, geographically representative of the city. We looked at a lot of different elements within the survey. You know, again, we're focusing on housing and employment tonight because that's what we need to get to. And, you know, again, and you've seen this before, these survey elements, we asked different types of growth, how you would place them, where you would place them. We did a light budgeting exercise where we actually got people to get to the target. So asking them to place a certain number of pins. And you can see like single family or duplex, those hotter circles, the yellow are the largest number of pins. There's definitely focus areas. And as I click through, you know, duplex and triplex, Sean Pioneer is going to pop up, I think, on pretty much every map for a variety of uses, but you start to see these in different locations within the city. Townhomes and smaller apartments, again, you see some downtown. Again, Sean Pioneer, you know, just keeps popping up in those locations. But then when you get to larger development, larger apartment buildings, it starts to get a little bit more geographically diverse. South Hill, downtown, again, that Shaw Pioneer area. But you start to see in your urbanized areas, people are gravitating to placing those growth in areas that are already developed. So there's some space where, you know, middle housing or infill would certainly occur. But from a community standpoint, folks are focusing in those areas where we would expect growth to occur anyway. So that's a good kind of result. Mixed use buildings, many people want to see that downtown, and that goes along with that vibrancy that we've heard in other parts of the survey. People want walkable, they want housing options, they want close to services. So it's not, again, not surprising to see that in the downtown context. And then commercial, it's a little bit more mixed, still downtown. You're also seeing some, in some similar areas that we had. Not surprising to see South Hill with the mall there. But, is that the same type of commercial use that you're seeing today? Industrial was very focused. Again, I think people thought put more industrial where there's already industrial. Again, that's not an unusual response. It's nice to see that it's not downtown, so we don't have to address that. But again, these things are some that already meet your future land use, whereas there's others where we would look at potential changes, which is why we want to look at them within the alternatives context. So with that, we took all of that input, the baseline analysis, other components, and developed 3 different alternatives for your consideration. The first is no action, the second is focused growth, and the third is distributed growth. And so I'll step through each of these individually, just to make sure that we're clear on what it is we're looking at. So the no action alternative, that is one that's required by SEPA. So we have to do a no action alternative. Typically, how no action is developed is essentially, essentially your existing plans and policies. What if you carried that forward? What if you carried that forward through 2044? How far would that get you? What we found through some of the buildable lands inventory and likely some of the policy implications, particularly around middle housing, critical areas, no action alternative is not going to meet SEPA requirements. And that's okay for no action not to meet that requirement, but we are required to have that as a base for comparison with the action alternatives. As I want to reiterate, your housing isn't really your issue for your targets. It's really your employment. So even no action, it's probably going to meet those housing targets. We're seeing through our initial analysis that it does, but it's not going to meet your employment targets. So we're going to need to do something else. Alternative 2 is focused growth, and this really focuses growth within the regional centers. So if you remember those hot areas on the maps from a community input standpoint, it's downtown, it's South Hill, it's a little bit on River Road. It's really focusing on those 2 areas as the place to meet your growth targets for both population and employment. So you'll see more growth in those areas as opposed to more of a distributed growth that you see in the next alternative that I'll discuss. This will meet your targets. We'll organize that from a land use standpoint and a density standpoint to be able to accommodate that. That allows us to do the traffic and public works or public utilities analysis to see what those impacts are. Alternative 3 is distributed growth. So this one looks at a series of kind of districts or nodes within the city, looking at some of the engagement where a number of respondents to the survey actually wanted to see small local scale nodes, which could be commercial or different types of residential in the southwestern portion of the city, along Shaw and Pioneer, some other localized spots that aren't as dense or intense as South Hill or downtown, but provide those localized services with some different types of housing. This one will likely exceed, both for a housing and employment standpoint, your targets. And that's okay from an analysis standpoint. Again, when we get to the draft future land use map and that preferred alternative, it's likely not going to be any one of these wholesale. It's likely going to be a combination. It's really just for us to assure that we're bracketing our analysis so that we have something that's a little higher so that we can step back. We don't want to be at the end in the draft EIS and then actually exceed that and then have to redo analysis. We want to make sure we have a good bracket so that we can come back and pick something in the middle. That's usually what happens. This also assumes a little bit more middle housing, which is a state requirement that you allow that within your code. And so we are making some assumptions with middle housing for this as well. So a little more housing in alternative 3, potentially a little bit more on the job standpoint. All right, so what do these look like on the ground? So no action, again, is essentially your existing comprehensive plan. It continues the future land use map, the existing zoning. And then really looks at, from what the market study told us, as, kind of what is that base level of growth that we can assume within the regional centers. What we're seeing is that, again, you'll probably be able to accommodate the housing portion of your targets, but not the employment portion of the targets. So we're going to have to do something a bit different there for the other two alternatives. But again, we have to look at this as a part of that. Alternative 2 focuses again on the centers, downtown and South Hill. This looks at really focusing growth in those two areas. So where growth would occur, it's thinking about redevelopment potentially of portions of South Hill. It looks at downtown, not necessarily changing Main Street per se, but there's a lot of vacant or underutilized land within downtown, actually assuming growth within those areas. Could be a commercial, it could be mixed use, it could be residential. But then also, kind of honoring what the community told us in some of these other areas as well too. So, Pioneer and Shaw along South Meridian, and also looking at River Road, which is also another focus area that you have within the city. It's not a regional center, but it's an area that has been zoned for mixed use for those types of uses. So higher levels of growth, but in areas that we're not looking at those concentrations, residential stays residential. So, single family stays single family unless it's kind of in one of these core areas. And then the distributed growth, you can see there's a lot more color, a lot more circles on the map. That's why we're assuming slightly higher amounts of residential that would probably be accommodated under this specific alternative. Downtown and South Hill would still grow, we're assuming, but not to the extent under alternative 2. This one in particular looks at potentially increased employment areas near the hospital. There is a lot of land, and that the hospital has been active and what they're starting to work through in terms of development. So that's a what if. We considered more of an office or medical component there. But also in some other areas, you'll see some of those light purple circles. Those are those nodes that people identified through the survey. It's like small commercial, locally serving commercial, maybe a little bit different types of housing within there, but the surrounding residential essentially stays the same. So it's really, all of these alternatives really focus kind of where that's at, just in different ways. So I'm going to stop there just for a moment, and then we can.
Councilmember Johnson, do you have questions?
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'd like to just give comments on the alternatives. What I like about alternative 3 is I feel like one of the things that's been really important to me, and I've heard from various stakeholders, is connectivity between the downtown core and the South Hill. And this alternate plan kind of creates this jugular vein of connectivity between kind of uptown and downtown kind of vibe. And so to see that development of connectivity of a major jugular vein of development really seems to make sense to connect the two. So I really like that specific aspect of it, which I think is super, super important that we have that implemented. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Councilmember Johnson. Let me note to colleagues that this is a consensus process. So if you find aspects of one that you think should be integrated into the other, feel free to state so. We are not here just to accept 1, 2, or 3. So I appreciate those comments. They were somewhat of a deviation that could be applied to the other ones too. With that, do we have any comments? Continue.
And I thank you for that, Mayor. And I do want to clarify, with these alternatives, these are just what ifs. So when we get into the future, likely what will happen, Councilor, to your question or your comment about that jugular of Meridian, that could become part of a draft future map. It doesn't mean that we have to evaluate it in each one. In fact, having some diversity of alternatives is good because you can show differences and make decisions based on that. So I think for what we need is, are we missing anything within these maps? Are there critical issues that you see are not addressed as a part of that? And ultimately what we want to get to is we want to have a bracket that we can, do some analysis, and then that will help the community and yourselves make decisions on what ultimately that future alternative would be. And then we'll do more analysis in the FEIS.
Do you have further presentation?
Nope, that was it. It's these
Okay.
3 alternatives, and it's just in terms of next steps. If you agree this evening that these are good alternatives to move forward, we would then step into the environmental process.
Understand. Councilmember Whitting.
Yeah, I'd just like to make the comment, I lean towards alternative 3 and, in the city of Puyallup, a large portion of our city is zoned single family home. And over time, as we absorb more population, we're going to have to go into increase our density. And I think it's beneficial to start that process sooner. And, just as an example, on 23rd Avenue, just up from Meridian, there's a small development there of row houses that it's a quite a nice development, and it provides some additional density, but it's it's attractive area. It doesn't detract from our communities in any way, as far as I'm concerned. So having the ability to develop those kind of having those kind of developments pop up across our city, I think is a healthier way to organically grow our density, as opposed to having it all concentrated in one spot. And so that's kind of the way I'm leaning. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilmember Gilliam.
Thank you, Mayor Castema. Alex, great job so far. Really impressed with all the work that you've already invested into this, and I'm grateful that this is a discovery process that we're all in together. So thank you. I am inclined to lean more towards the distributed growth concept, Plan 3, mainly due to the fact that being new to council and having doorbelled quite a bit through the entire city and listening to the concerns of our constituents, it is the dense growth right in their own little space that they don't want to deal with the congestion. They're frustrated with overpopulation, so to speak, in their own small area. Wow, that sounds horrible. It's not small areas, but what I'm trying to say is we're pretty congested, and the fear is that we're going to become more congested. So I like the idea that we're getting their voice to be able to even spread out a little bit more, because we do have to face growth, and but we want it to feel more stretched out rather than just so enclosed. So I look forward to more public comment on this and more opportunity to hear their voice and what they would like to see that growth look like. But the common voice I've heard from the constituents is more spread out and not just so condensed. But I'm really looking forward to, I'm not quite sure what it's called, because I'm very excited to be here today. Maybe overexcited. What is our Meeker Street project, where people can walk through. So just helping our constituents understand the value of, it's okay to park away and walk down, and just to help people feel more at home in our hometown. So thank you.
Councilmember Dorr.
Thank you. So I just want to clarify what staff is looking for tonight. So we're not choosing an alternative. You're asking us if we want to add or modify these 3 alternatives before you go out. Is that correct?
Correct. So yes, you're not, your recommended alternative is several months down the road. What we're asking for now is we want to make sure that you're okay with us evaluating these alternatives. And ultimately, Councilor Gilliam, getting to the community, the first thing they're going to talk about is traffic. There's other things, parks, those elements. By being able to enter into the environmental process, we can start to address that. And so that's what we really need to do before, to be honest, we go out again, because that's the first thing they're going to ask, and we're going to need to have some information to be able to have a conversation.
So I appreciate the work that is done here, and I think that the 3 options are really good and reflective of the different views. So I don't have any changes or additions, but great job. Thanks.
Councilmember King.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Great job with all of this work that you guys have done. I love all of it that I've seen so far. I especially like the alternative 3, but I just want to say great job on all this work. And I know that it is a lot of work, that you guys have to do over the next few months in order to get this done. And so kudos for that. And yeah, I'm a big fan of 3, but we'll see how this all shakes out. But good job
Thank you.
and well done. Keep up the good work and looking forward to the finished product.
We have a great team, and city staff has been amazing to work with on this. So it's fast, but we're getting there. So.
Good.
Thank you. We're going to skip over Councilmember Whitting to Councilmember Johnson only because Councilmember Johnson has not spoken yet.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. You know, I would just kind of pedal back. You were asked the questions, not so much choosing, but are we missing anything? But I would still kind of lean back that I think we are hearing something on alternate 3 is that we want you to focus on that and see something. It's not that it's missing, but we want you to really put your radar on that. And so I hope that you're picking up on that, because I think I've heard at least 4 people say that as kind of a primary interest based off of various reasons. So anyway, I hope that you're taking cognizant awareness of that. Thank you.
Councilmember Whitting.
You know, my earlier comments, I talked about residential, but obviously employment growth is a big part of this. And I look at the area south of Pioneer and east of Meridian, and there's a huge area in there where there really aren't much in the way of services. And, you know, I've heard discussions about having a bistro there. So, you know, if you put a bistro along Meridian, along Shaw Road someplace, then it would save people driving all the way down the hill to the Pioneer Crossing or driving all the way across town to the Starbucks. And so having small local business things, I think would help relieve some of our congestion and allow people to cut down on the amount of driving they have to do. You know, if you have to go get some Sudafed for your kid at 12 o'clock at night, you know, it'd be nice to be able to go a few blocks as opposed to a few miles. Thank you.
Any further comments? I'll provide my comment. I actually am focused on alternative 2. I think that there are many things that the city of Puyallup will have to be addressing. The middle housing legislation that the legislature put forward will put tremendous pressure on neighborhoods by subdividing lots in half, by also making a fourplex a mandatory option within all the neighborhoods. And I think our neighborhoods right now, just based on that legislation and future legislation that I've heard, really were going to be infringed upon. And I think that if you'll notice back to the community comments, there people wanted a delineation for the most part between the commercial areas and the residential. And I think that alternative 3 makes our city look more like Swiss cheese. And I know that you would say that that will somehow ease congestion, but I would say we concentrate congestion in those areas with the best infrastructure. And the best infrastructure are in fact those areas that we designate in our alternative 2 and alternative 1. I think what you'll see when you go to other communities, and I had just had the opportunity to go to Idaho, where I saw them planning communities from scratch. They said, we have nothing to impede us whatsoever. How should we go about that? You will find that they develop in layers. They put concentrated develop in one area, and from that, they move out to less concentrated developments. And they're very methodical about it because they want to put that which has the greatest density and the greatest use on that infrastructure that can handle that. I think this distributed model combined with the mixed use housing, I don't think it's a ticket for the city of Puyallup. I'm willing to look at the alternatives, but I am one who believes very much so that our neighborhoods, in fact, need to be protected to the greatest extent possible, even though we know there's going to be a huge number of changes that take place. I would also say, not only go to planned communities, but go to other communities in Washington State. And I think you will see they make very and I'm talking about higher end communities, they make clear distinctions between their residential and commercials. So that would be my vote. Take it as you will. So is there any further comment? Remember, I'm just one of 7. So with that, we will thank you very much. And we'll now move on to the next item.
Appreciate it. Thank you.
So in other business, we have 3 points. Point 8A is the Puyallup Police Department Strategic Plan. Scott Engel, Chief of Police, could you come forward?
Mayor Castema, Deputy Mayor King, members of the City Council, Scott Engel, Chief of Police, District 1. Thank you for your attention tonight to the strategic plan. It's my privilege and honor to bring that before you, a work of our department and other city staff members and key people in our community bring forth our strategic plan tonight. There we go. So we'll start first with just a brief overview of the department, talk about our mission, vision, values, the community engagement process that we used for our strategic plan, our SWOT analysis, and then our areas of focus. A little bit about the department for our community and for those of you who might be new to the council, we have 4 divisions within our organization. It's how we provide service to our community. Our operations division, which is our patrol division, all of our uniformed personnel and marked patrol cars and answering 911 calls, patrolling neighborhoods, business districts. Our investigations division, which is basically our detectives and our undercover folks that work on things that happen post operations or uniformed personnel response. Our professional services division is the division that is basically anything that's not in patrol or not in investigation. It includes our traffic unit, our community policing unit, homeless outreach officer, our school resource officers, training, you name it, it all kind of sits there. And then, of course, corrections is related to our jail. Each of our divisions is led by 1 captain. And of course, we have a number of personnel assigned. We are 98 now from top to bottom, actually 100 when you include our chaplain and our designated crisis responder, who is a Good Sam employee, but stationed with us at the police department. 2022, we answered just over 43,000 calls for service, 8,000 traffic stops, 56,000 calls for service, 8,000 case reports, and 1,800 arrests last year in 2022. So our mission, vision, and values have remained the same at the Puyallup Police Department for a number of years. And this is what guides our officers and our staff and our service to our community. These are the things that when you interact with a member of the Puyallup Police Department, we hope you see one of these core values in their service. Our mission is very simple. It's a partnership. We cannot do it alone. And that's one thing we talk with citizens about. It's a partnership to make sure that every street, every neighborhood, every business community is safe. We can't be on every street corner at every moment of every day. We really count on the community to be in partnership with that. And our vision is to be a premier law enforcement agency, to be progressive, to use technologies and be an agency that's recognized for leaning forward, both in our service to our community, our use of our technology, and the resources that we've been entrusted with. So I want to first, before I get into community input, really recognize Talika Makaharia and Kirsten Hoffman. As we put together our strategic plan, community input was very important for us, reaching out to very specific community groups, residents, and asking them to come to the table and tell us what they thought about the Puyallup Police Department, how we provide service to our community, and how we should be providing service going forward. And that process was facilitated by Talika and Kirsten, and I can't recognize them enough of doing several listening sessions with our community. Thank you, Talika, and Kirsten's not here with us, but thank you, Kirsten, as well for taking that time. So for us, community input was, again, very strategic. These are organizations that we regularly work with throughout the course of a year in all kinds of different scenarios, from the Main Street Association to the Puyallup School District to St. Francis House, the Food Bank, the Washington State Fair, the Main Street Association, Chamber of Commerce, South Hill Mall, and Puyallup Nissan, who actually represented the Auto Dealers Association here in Puyallup. We're all asked to come to various sessions and tell us again, how are we doing? What do you think about us? And what do you think about us going forward? There were 4 themes that came from that community input that we really appreciated. First was service. Unanimously across all the focus groups from the community, there was a recognition that the Puyallup Police Department displays and lives our values. And that's very, very important for us to hear that feedback, because we spend a lot of time and effort with our staff talking about our values cannot be something that just hangs on the wall or is on the back of our business card. We have to go out there and live that, show that, demonstrate it, and serve in that. So that was very heartwarming to see that across those focus groups, that people do recognize we are a values-based organization. And then lots of praise for the department in terms of integrity and excellence in the form of quick response to community concerns. Our job is to have our thumb, so to speak, on the community and know what's happening in our neighborhoods and our business communities, and being able to quickly shift gears and do what we can to solve that problem, address that problem, or at least be a voice in how we address community concern. Next one was the desire for more police presence, bike patrols, foot patrols, and other forms of visibility to build relationships, increase feeling of safety in downtown Puyallup. And candidly, this is one that I will say that as a department, we're not happy with either. We've got some work to do in this area. This is one that we continue to push on year after year after year. And it came through very strongly in our community groups that all of us know, believe, and see how valuable our downtown in particular is to our community. The events that happen in Pioneer Park, the opportunity for residents to gather in businesses, to enjoy a meal or enjoy other things downtown. Our downtown is really foundational to our community, and that's very important to our police department. So this was good feedback for us to hear that, hey, Puyallup Police Department, we want to see you more, and that's an area for growth for us. Next feedback that was pretty universal across the different groups was low awareness of the department's community events and programs for residents and businesses. This was one that caught us off guard. It's one of those things you think maybe you're hitting the target until you realize maybe we're not. So across the focus groups, they were not aware of all the different programs that the department offers, all the different initiatives that we have within the community. So we took this as one of, this is an area where we can do better. We can do better in educating our citizens. We can do other means beyond social media, newsletters, things like that, neighborhood groups, of letting people know what are we doing, how are we engaged, and how you can partner as a community member with the police department. And then finally, a desire for more education about what the police can or cannot do in the current environment. This was very distinct across the groups. Folks wanting to understand post-police reform, what can officers do and what we can't do. We heard that loud and clear. And frankly, I hear that even today. Speaking at Wesley Homes earlier this week at a breakfast meeting up there, again, residents' desire to understand where is policing in 2024 and what can officers do and not do. And then finally, clarity on circumstances when it's appropriate to call the police or other services. There seems to always be a hesitation from citizens. They're just not sure if they could call. And our message is to call, and call again. Don't assume we know, and don't assume you're bothering us. That's what our job is. We want to serve and we want to know. And the best way is for people to tell us what is happening. We then followed that community kind of gathering of community input, gathering of community feedback with a SWOT analysis, our strengths, our weaknesses, our opportunities, and our threats. And most of you are aware of a standard SWOT analysis, and I'll start first with our strengths. Our police department enjoys strong support from our residents, our businesses, and the community organizations and neighborhoods. That was identified across all the different groups, our internal department group, our external department groups. The police department enjoys good community support, and we know that our service is why we enjoy that support, and the importance for us is good quality service to our community. Again, the department is known for its values-based leadership and approach to policing. Again, for us, that's good feedback. It's good to hear that and know that and identify that our values, again, are something that are getting out there and that people see. The Puyallup Police Department has a swift response time to priority calls for service. We know that one of the first impressions that we have with our citizens is, did we get there fast enough? When someone's calling 911 and they have an emergency, we've got to get there, and we've got to get there quick because that's their time of need. And that's our first benchmark, if you will, of whether we're hitting the target with our community, is whether we can get there in an appropriate amount of time for what they're calling in about. Number 4, the department emphasizes investment in updated technology, equipment, and training. Puyallup PD definitely leans forward, and our folks recognized that our department has a great commitment to using technology, emphasizing training our officers leads to excellent service for our neighborhoods and business community and our people in coming to Puyallup to enjoy all the things that we have here. In our opinion, one of the few cities that has a jail. For as long as I've been here, the jail has been a critical piece for how we do business in our community to ensure that the law actually means something and that there's accountability when you break the law. That's been very important for us that we can, when necessary, solve problems through arrest if that's the route we need to go. And number 6, the department staff is of high caliber, professional, well-trained, and is committed to quality work. We have so many people in the organization who have some type of connection through Puyallup, through either living here, graduating from here, connections here. I'm amazed how many people we have applying that are coming back to Puyallup, something we've heard tonight from some of you. And I think that's a testament to the quality of the department and the quality of people that we have. Our weaknesses, the current police building, if I could say it was a dump up there, I'd just put that up there, but it's a dump. It's aging. It's overcrowded and it's outdated and it's falling down in some places. No new news there. Number 2, staff recruitment and retention is a challenge. We have avoided this for a long time, but it has caught up to us in some areas where we, just like many other departments, many other industries, are now starting to see a little bit of a tip of the tide in some of our positions and having some challenges in recruiting into those positions. We have strategies that we're going to use this next year to work on that. But I will tell you this, we're certainly not in the place of some of the larger law enforcement agencies that are looking down a very empty list of candidates. We still get candidates coming to Puyallup that want to be police officers here or staff members here, and that's a good thing. Number 3, this really has to do with when we do experience vacancies caused by folks either retiring, people leaving the profession, things like that. It takes us a while to get people outfitted, trained, certified to head out on solo patrol. That does cause stress on our organization, particularly for our men and women in the patrol ranks. We provide a very high level of customer service. We respond to all calls still in Puyallup. We do no online reporting. We continue to try to make as much face-to-face contact as we can, and we try to get there in a very appropriate time. Obviously, when we're down positions, that can be taxing for our folks working the street. Also, area of weakness we've noted for the future ahead is 66%, and I'll actually tell you it's a little higher now, of our command staff team retires in the next 1 to 3 years. We have a very close grouping of people in terms of age and experience in our command staff, and we will lose a lot of them, almost all of them but me, in the next few years. And so that presents some weakness for us and some opportunities as well. Shifting to opportunities, one thing we heard from community feedback is we have an opportunity to tell our story better and educate the community through more intensive and extensive use of social media and digital contact. And that's some of the work we're doing around kind of re-envisioning our community engagement coordinator position. We know that most folks are not showing up to meetings these days. They're getting their content through other means. And so we as a department need to shift gears and recognize that too and try to continue to provide good information that is valuable to our community through those means. Another opportunity for us is community education and engagement and the focus on perception of safety. This is one that, frankly, we hit our head against the wall a lot on. We know that just the perception of safety, whether true or not, is very, very important to the individual. We want people to not only be safe in our community, but we really want people to feel safe in our community, in all areas of our community. Whether you live in the Northeast, Southeast, Southwest, or Northwest, that perception of safety is very important to us. And our department plays a key role in that, in educating people about what is occurring in our department, in our community, but also about how they can be a partner with us in community safety. Number 3 is succession planning and development of leadership potential. That ties back to one of our opportunities weaknesses as we see many of our leadership team, both at the captain level, the deputy chief, and several of our sergeants retiring in the next 1 to 3 years. That's an opportunity for us to invest in our folks to make sure that they're ready to take the baton and continue to lead and continue to provide the high level of service that we do in Puyallup. That is quite an undertaking for us in the years ahead, just because of the expected retirements that we do have. And then an update to the department's processes. And this is rather generic because for 2024 in particular, we are very focused internally on how can we continue to refine how we provide service to our community to provide it even better, to be even more excellent in what we're doing now. We always need to take a step back and look at our processes to make sure that they're current with time, they're current with practice, they're current in our line of work with current case law, and they're current with the process, the resources that we have, that we're utilizing the resources as best we can. Next comes our threats. Again, these were identified across both our internal groups and our external groups. The effects of some of the 2021 Washington State legislative changes has certainly impacted our profession. And we could spend all day long talking about the pros and cons of it, but the honest answer is it's had a profound effect. It's had a profound effect, particularly for the men and women who are on the streets working patrol. The lack of fear of accountability is a real thing. It's a real thing our police officers are seeing. The inability to deal with people who get to a car and continue to not stop for law enforcement or flee just because they know that there's very few things we can pursue now is a real problem. It's a real foundational shift, I think, in our system, and it's had a real impact for us. And we went through a few years there where we really said, ollie, ollie, oxen free around substance abuse. And I think, again, that had some profound effects that we're now trying to back the train up and realize we went too far with that. Number two, the lack of support from the current judicial system and laws for offender accountability. It's my opinion as your police chief, and I think probably 99% of my department, that our legal system right now is heavily focused on the offender. And we've forgotten that there are victims of crime. And we really need to find balance in that. It really shouldn't be one or the other. You can do both, but many things seem to have fallen on the wayside as we think about that there are actual victims of crime. Property crime does matter to victims who've been victimized, had their house burglarized, their car stolen, or they've been a victim of identity theft or these other things. Those are important things, just as violent crimes are too, but we can't lose sight that there are victims of crime. Lack of funding to support high levels of service and technology for the city's growing population and state mandates. And this is really directed at many of the state mandates that have come to law enforcement in the last several years. There has been so much that has come down to this from the state to local level, to the local jurisdictions, to the police departments, to the cities, that truly has been unfunded. And there has to be some recognition that that is challenging for us to navigate. It's fiscally straining, I think, for local government, and it's certainly very challenging for local police departments to be able to navigate many of the things that we've been asked to do with, frankly, not a lot of fiscal support from the state to be able to do those things. And then next is, again, another obvious, but the lack of community support for the new public safety building, frankly, is a real challenge for our department, for our officers, for recruitment and retention, and what does that mean going forward? And I think there's lots of questions to be answered around that. So all of this led to what are our goals and strategic initiatives for our strategic plan? And we identified 3 areas: serving our community, department excellence, and workforce development and wellness. And with each of those goals, we came up with some strategic initiatives to help us address and achieve those goals. First, we'll start with our strategic initiatives around serving our community. One of the things that we will be looking at strongly in these next couple of years is the development of a behavioral health crisis response team for crisis calls in partnership with Central Pierce, in partnership with some of our other community stakeholders. Our officers are continually responding to calls that are very complex in terms of mental health crisis, substance abuse issues, and things that, frankly, need a specialized team to be able to focus on. The idea behind number 1 is that we're really looking at our folks that we are continually coming in contact with, that are finding themselves in and out of jail, finding themselves in and out of the ER, finding themselves in and out of the response recovery system, and really focusing on those key folks that we need to do some intensive case management and finding some better solutions than what we have. And we do that by partnering and working collaboratively with our other important stakeholders. Number 2 is one that, as you know, we've been able to launch in 2023, our designated crisis responder, which was funded by a grant. And this has been an absolute grand slam for us. I am really, really excited about this one. Our designated crisis responder is a mental health professional from Good Sam Multicare, and she now responds to calls where officers are encountering people in crisis. And our first hope is that she is able to work her magic and help us help that person, not end up in the jail or not necessarily end up in the ER, but end up in a more appropriate setting where they can get help in times of crisis. We have had great success with this so far. I'm very, very pleased. We recently had oral boards for lateral officers, and we had 2 officers comment on amazing to see a police department having a crisis responder embedded with them responding to calls. So this has been a great program for us, and this is a high priority for us in the years ahead to continue to maintain what we have and hopefully find areas of expansion. Number 3 is community partnership and engagement. This is our department's commitment to strengthening our footprint, our handshake, if you will, our shoulder to shoulder with our neighborhoods through block watches, opportunities for meaningful opportunities to both listen and partner about how we provide safety in our community. Again, as I mentioned from our mission, vision, and values, we cannot do it alone, and we recognize that. It requires us to be partnered hip to hip, if you will, with our community as we address community safety. Number 4 is visibility, and this goes right back to that idea of our community really desires to see our officers being more visible in all areas of our community. And we're going to do that and hopefully continue to be able to do that through dedicated foot patrols, bicycle patrols, and electric bikes, which was actually a suggestion from some of our Puyallup citizens, in our hopes that we know that just by seeing us out and about does provide some sense of safety and security to our citizens. It has been a challenge, to be quite candid with you. We've had so many people in training. And again, this goes back to one of those opportunities, weaknesses, challenges of when we are down staffing numbers. It is challenging for us to do some of those bike patrols, foot patrols, and other things because frankly, we're responding to a lot of calls for service across our community. Number 5 is youth engagement. We have had a strong law enforcement explorer post. I think we have an award-winning SRO program, but we really want to take that to the next level and provide youth an opportunity in our community to do some form of our community academy, specifically focused for youth. We know that our youth are our future leaders, and our profession needs them bad. And this is our opportunity to be able to reach out and make a connection in a positive way, to answer their questions and have them come along shoulder to shoulder with us and learn about what we do in our community and help them be reassured that we are a good community partner to be with. Information sharing is again that idea that we're moving to more digital information, moving to an area where we know our citizens are hungry for that information about what is happening during incidents, and being able to share that in more real time. And we're doing that from a team approach in the department. And then emergency management. We recognize that our police officers and our staff, should we have any type of community incident or natural disaster, our officers play a critical role in making sure our community is resilient in that and is able to respond to whatever that problem is. For us in particular, it's the East Pierce County LAHAR Rapid Action Plan. This next year, our focus being that if we were, which I hope we don't, but if we were to have a LAHAR, our officers will play a critical role in helping people get to high ground. And we want to make sure that we're excellent if that should happen. Next is department excellence. This is focused kind of internally on what we're doing as a department and of course accreditation. You know, in December that we achieved accreditation through the Washington Association of Sheriffs and Police Chiefs. But the process of reaccreditation is about 5 times harder than the process of accreditation. And so our focus continues to stay on making sure we're an accredited agency, making sure that we follow best practices, making sure that we stay current in the changes in the law, and making sure that when we get to the next reaccreditation cycle, which is 4 years out, that we will in fact be reaccredited again. The public safety building is again no brainer that we will be there ready to go to address whatever solutions we come up with that. It is a real need. It doesn't go away, and it's something that our staff is truly looking forward to addressing. New technology, automatic license plate readers, frankly, have been in our community for a number of years. They've been mounted on the tops of our cars. Our mobile cameras that are in our dashes have ALPR readers in them. And our flock public safety cameras, from my perspective, are going to be a tremendous game changer in how we fight crime in our community. And as we get closer to the deployment of that, we will be doing community outreach so people understand what they are. But this is, again, an opportunity for the department to use technology to improve our service delivery and fight crime in our community. Number 4 is our drone program. Puyallup, far and above, continues to lead the charge in using drones in call responses, using drones in scenarios where offenders have fled on foot, using drones to increase officer safety by sending a drone into a home rather than a police officer first, to know as much as we can before we make entry. One of the exciting things we'll be looking at the next 2 years is a drone as a first responder. There are agencies that are beginning to use drones flying to certain calls for service to leave your officers in service for other types of calls for service. And it's something that we are, frankly, geographically well set up for in Puyallup to possibly use and enhance our service response to our community. Next, priority 3 is workforce development and wellness. And frankly, this is about our people. Our people are our strength in our department. They are our strength in our commitment and service to our community. And we have to continually invest in our people so we can continue to do a good job. First is succession planning. And this is, again, talking about our definite change we will have in many of our leadership positions in the departments as we have several people retiring, and developing that succession plan and making sure that our training mentorship opportunities are in place. Health and wellness supports the employee and wellness through measures such as voluntary advanced cardiac screening for police officers. I think you know that your last meeting in December, you approved a contract with LifeScan Wellness, which will be coming to the police department. It's a very progressive approach to officer wellness and well-being. Our police officers, by the nature of their job, have some different health impacts, some different health effects than the average public does. And this will allow us to provide some advanced detection for police officers to recognize if there are some things that they don't know might be going wrong and have an opportunity to address those early on. Staff training, as we continue to stay focused on staff training, developing a master training plan for our agency, there's been so much that has come our way in terms of additional training and additional needs around training. This is our opportunity to continue to make sure that we're hitting the mark for our instructors, for our officers, for all the people who have to have specialty endorsements, and for all the specialized training that we have to have. And then 4 and 5, recruitment and retention, that really go hand in hand. It's a real opportunity for us, number 1, to retain people. Every single person we have is important in the police department, and we want to hold on to every single person that we can. Recruitment is an all-out fight amongst law enforcement agencies right now because the pool is not as deep as it once was. And so when you come across those candidates that we kind of call the A+ candidates, it's an all-out fight to get them and land them at the department. And so we continue to stay very focused on recruitment and retention. So how are we going to measure all of this? Well, first is our response times. As I said earlier, that's our number 1 thing out of the gate is, did we get to the call for service in a timely and appropriate manner? We know that people waiting for a police officer, particularly if it's an emergency, is not a comfortable feeling. And our job is to get there as quickly and safely and appropriately as we can. Number 2 is our community survey that we do. We've been provided great feedback and data from that community survey on how people feel about safety in our community, how they feel about how we do in our service to them. Number 3 is our calls for police services. You know, this is the one that is frankly very hotly debated in my profession about is this a valid benchmark or not? And I actually think it is. Calls for police services, meaning that I think your community is still engaged with you. They're calling you to alert you things. They're telling you what's happening out there, and we have an opportunity to respond and deal with those issues. Number 4 is police community events. Part of, again, our challenge and our goal is to stay engaged face-to-face with our community so they can see who we are, get to ask their questions, and interact with us in a positive environment. And then number 4, participation rate in our cardiac screening and wellness initiatives. As we put a lot of commitment and a lot of energy and a lot of resources to that, what is our participation rate amongst our staff in those endeavors? And with that, I'd appreciate any questions, feedback, or comments that you have.
Councilmember Johnson.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Mayor. Mr. Mayor, I want to direct this kind of comment to get to kind of to you a little bit and just kind of tee it up. 'Cause I know one of the things when you came on board that you were very big on was the and other council members supporting it too, but it just seems like your voice was kind of leading charge on this with this kind of lean process of making sure the internal city departments are efficient with customer service feedback and things like this. And so I want to ask a question on that, Chief. Do we provide a lean process to get feedback from our, not just from a general survey, but actual in response to a follow-up of a call? In other words, when you give general surveys, that's very, very loose, but actual customers that are actually making calls for service, is there a process that identifies that? And if so, could it be a little bit more detailed? Is it telling, or could we expand that a little bit more?
So we do provide a process for feedback on the back of our officers' business cards. There's a little QR code, and this started probably approximately 8 months ago now, that when our officers go out and they interact with the person that's been a victim of crime, we write a case number on the front of that card. On the back of that card is now a QR code where they can take a survey about how we did. That is our first step into more of a formalized process for some response from our customers when we go out and provide or answer a call for service or respond to a 911 incident. We also ask our sergeants in major critical incidents to go out and talk to people. How did we do? And then there's we get lots of comments and feedback through social media messages. In our portal, we have a citizen portal on our webpage, allows for our community to provide us both good and bad comments at all time, and we follow up with all of those. But directly answer your question, our QR code on the back of our business cards for our officers in patrol in particular has been our first push to see how this goes.
Yeah, and City Manager, I'd like to follow up. I know that the planning department, when someone goes through the process of the experience of the application, the process, there's an automatic survey that goes out. They don't have a QR code. They just automatically get sent something so that we can actually get that feedback, because not everyone may do the QR code. So could there be something like that adopted hypothetically in a police situation where there's automatically something mailed out to where they could give feedback and tee it up more so the response level could be a little higher?
So probably I would say 10 to 12 years ago, the department did do that. And what we found is we had very little return of those surveys. And so our idea behind the QR code is those who would like to provide us surveys, responses will.
Okay. And the other thing too, and I want, again, Mr. Mayor, I want to alert you to this as well. And colleagues, part of feedback is controlling what we can control, which is internal. So City of Puyallup employees under your leadership, but there's certain elements that you can't control. Are there ability to feedback for that 911 call? So let's just say, you get there, but we don't know what their experience was with 911. So is there a process to find out what their experience with a contracted 911 who doesn't work for us per se, other than a contract, to make sure that before they even get to step one, that they can get feedback on what their experience was directly, so we have that information and not be able to just kind of get it maybe after the fact?
Councilmember Johnson, there's not a formal process for the experience of calling 911 before it ever reaches us that I'm aware of. We certainly do get lots of feedback from citizens who call 911 and their experience with that.
Yeah.
But there is no formal process from our department to get that feedback. I
So-
can't speak for South Sound 911 and
No.
do that in a different vein that I'm not aware of.
Well, I think it's important to know that, because if there are issues, and maybe it's going flawlessly, I have no idea, but I have heard many who have been concerned with it over the years. So I'm not sure if it's isolated or if it's a consistent theme. But if we're contracting for services and if we feel that we're using their services and somehow there could be improvement, we have an obligation to the taxpayers to make, hey, listen, we're getting this feedback. Can we at least tweak that a little bit? So I hope that we're holistically looking at this, because we can only control what we can control. But if we have contract support services that are, maybe have a different standard to our standard, then we need to be able to address that. And I hope there is a lean process to identify that part of our service to make sure that we're providing holistic service, not just once we get the call and then, or maybe perhaps 2 steps behind the schedule at that point.
Appreciate that.
Thank you.
I'd like to intervene at this point and actually address a point that you made, Councilmember Johnson. What might help Police Chief Engel is that if we have a format that is similar to our other strategic plans. And by that, I appreciate the fact that you've put together your vision, mission, values. Excellent. And then you go into your goal statements, but usually a goal statement, as we have this established format in our strategic plan, states what the goal is. And then you have key performance indicators that articulate if you're successful at that goal, what would that look like? In other words, if you, the first one under serve our community, we make sure that our community needs are met and they're fully aware of all the services that we offer, on and on and on. What would that look like in an actual performance measure? And then your initiatives basically work to move that performance measure. That's kind of the gradation that we use on our other strategic plans. That would help us kind of in a grid format understand this better and be able to look at things such as Councilmember Johnson says, well, 911 customer satisfaction levels. If the council believes that that is really a measure that we should look at, and we make that one of our key performance measures because we have that ability to modify these plans on being the governing body that we are, then, you know, we have to do that responsibly. We've got to know whether you can do it or whether you can't. But nevertheless, if we can, and we think it's important, then it's the responsibility of your department to really figure out how they improve that. So, but that's the format. And I would suggest that because I like what you've done, but it's done in a manner that may be appropriate for accreditation or these other standards. But I think we've used general accepted principles here in strategic planning with the idea of vision, mission, value, goals, key performance measure initiatives, indicators, et cetera, that indicate whether you're succeeding there. But it helps us up here do a better job of managing our departments when we can see that very clearly, and helps us determine really what performance measures we believe are relevant and which ones we don't. And obviously, there may be some that are very relevant to you that we would discuss and come to that decision. I don't want you to think it's an autonomous process. But what were your thoughts on that?
I think we tried to get at some of that, Mayor Castema, at the back, that last slide on performance measures, where we're talking about calls for service response times. I certainly hear you on those specific strategic initiatives and what is tied to that. Some of those are challenging for us. As you know, we've had this discussion. They can be challenging for us. But that's where we were going with that last slide of, if we're looking at response times, are we getting there so people feel safe in their community? Are we having enough community engagement through community events? Are people actually going through the initiatives of wellness and health screenings? And I use those as just some things where there's some clear metrics in that. Our numbers of calls for service, again, are an indicator for us. So I agree with you, and also just try to point out that we were trying to get at that last performance metric slide.
Okay, well, I'll provide some input offline if it's so appropriate.
Thank you.
Councilmember Whitting.
I just had a few questions. I wasn't aware previously of the number of retirements you have going. And I was just curious as to how many of those retirements do you think you can fill internally?
Hopefully all of them. Our
Good.
civil service rules speak to that as well. So there is a process outlined in our civil service rules on when we can go inside and when we can go outside. And I suspect that we'll have enough internal candidates that promotions will occur from within the organization.
Yeah, that's great. I'm a big supporter of internal development because it does great things for morale, and people can see their future ahead of them. So I applaud that. You mentioned in your presentation that there were 1,838 arrests during the past year. How many of those, what percentage of those translate into incarcerations?
That's a very good question that I probably don't know the exact number off the top of my head, but I would tell you the great majority of them do.
Okay. And you talked a little bit about response time, and my impression is that the response time in Puyallup is a small fraction of the response time in surrounding unincorporated Pierce.
Absolutely.
what is our, our response time?
So for a priority one call, which we define as an in-progress call that's occurring that has an immediate threat to life safety or an immediate threat to property such as a burglary and arson or something like that, we want to be on the scene of that call within 3 or 4 minutes. And that's our goal. For a priority two call, which is what we consider to be something not we need to get there right this second, but we need to get there pretty quick. There could be an impact to life safety. There could be an impact to a property call. We want to be on those calls within that 5 to 7 minute range.
Yeah, thank
we
you.
Consistently hit those targets. And that is a key metric that we watch very, very closely monthly from South Sound 911 about are our officers hitting those targets.
Yeah, I'm quite proud of those numbers. Thank you for giving me an update so that I can tell my constituents about that. Thank you.
Councilmember Dorr.
Thank you. Chief, thanks for the presentation. Excuse me. I do a lot of work in this area. I can speak to the South Sound issues, but one of the things which is interesting to me is I had 2 interactions recently. But one was with a vice principal, and she could not say enough about our SROs and what a partner they were, and what a resource they were for her. And then also, I don't know, I received communication from someone that they were grateful that the the traffic unit was out on 39th. So clearly they were not a recipient of a visit from the traffic unit, but they appreciate it. It's interesting to me when people reach out to give me that feedback, because generally they reach out to us with some concerns. So I think that speaks to the department, and I wanted you to be aware of those interactions.
Thank you.
I think I love the partnership. I have an opportunity to see the different ways in which you partner with the other agencies. I know that Central Pierce is very grateful for that partnership and the technology. You guys have a great relationship, and I know that at times, like with the drone, that in a fire, you partnered with them. So I appreciate that you guys are forward looking and trying to figure out public safety holistically for the community. The when should we call 911? Thank you for saying that, because I will tell you, even myself, I struggle with when to call 911. It's just not a good feeling, but I appreciate that Puyallup always responds, and that is not the case. It is not this case in Pierce County. We get a police officer on the scene. There are a lot of agencies that go to online reporting for a lot of different things, and so Puyallup is unique in that way. And the response times are really good. I get reports on some of those things, and the level of service that we are provided here is beyond comparison. So as far as South Sound 911, if there is a complaint, the chief usually, if somebody contacts the chief, he will work with the executive director. He gets that call, he reviews it, she reviews it, and they will address if there is any corrective action that needs to be taken from that. I have received a couple of different times some inquiries from people, and I will say the process at South Sound is the executive director will pull the call, and she will review it and counsel or not, provide the additional feedback. And that I know that Tacoma uses that process a lot. Some of the board members from Tacoma, if they get complaints, that she'll engage in that. There is a user survey out right now that I've been working on for a couple of years to get it out, where for our field officers to be able to provide feedback to South Sound on what they see, how they are interacting with the agency, what the agency could do better. The survey is ongoing right now, and it closes at the end of January. So that is one of the things that we're working on, is making sure that, that's one of my priorities, to make sure that we are hearing from everybody that has an experience there, and we're doing the best we can to address those. And the other thing, what Councilmember Whitting, when he said Sorry, now I'm doing it, and then I'm not getting sworn in either. The successes, yeah, and the internal thing, I think it's really important, and I love that about the department because you've created a very good culture there. And it's not always easy to bring in somebody from another culture and get them to fit into your Puyallup policing model or whatever the department is. So I think that these people, the officers, you've fostered that culture there, and I think that that serves the constituents well. And then on the DCR, I love the DCR program. And I will say that, so South Sound has just been approved. We were the first agency in Washington to get a crisis counselor on the dispatch floor. We are now approved for 6. And so why that matters to the DCR is so they can de-escalate 90, I don't think you've had the presentation, 90 to 95% of the calls on the dispatch floor. And get those people so that we don't have to send out our first responders. But if the call goes to a dispatch, then there is a definite need for you to have that backup. So part of that is you guys got my South Sound 911 report in my chief comments, and it's National Law Enforcement Day. Couldn't be prouder of our department, you, the leaders, everybody there. So please extend my gratitude. As constituent, council member, you guys do a great job. Thank you, Chief.
Thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember Dorr. I have to really apologize to my colleagues. I'm sorry that I'm coughing the way that I am. I hope that it's not being too disruptive. I was on a plane beginning at 2:30 in the morning and from one country to another, and then 15 hours on another flight. And it just kind of did me in. So I apologize, and I don't mean to be rude. And I think our deputy mayor may be taking over. Let's see. Well, maybe not. If you can bear with me. Councilmember Johnson.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. And Mr. Mayor, I want to bring this to your attention as well as my colleagues. You know, as a chief, you're a supervisor over all of your staff. Steve, as city manager, you're supervisor of all your staff. And if you have a department or staff that come to you with threats, it's part of your job to solve that, right? So you have an obligation to solve whatever threats could be within your department of oversight. If I understand correctly, as a council collectively, we have oversight. And if one of our departments is having a threat, what are we doing to address these 4 threats to bring relief to them and to help advocate on their behalf in a very progressive and forthright way, not just, oh, well, we're sorry you're going through that. Empathy is not enough. What actions are we taking to eliminate or minimize that threat? So it's my hope as council, as we look in this, specifically Mr. Mayor, that we look at some ways to aggressively fight back on point 1. You know, we can't just accept the fact the state legislature in 2021 did this. What are we doing to be proactive to protect and take away the threats that our police department is experiencing, but really, even more importantly, our constituent base that's being affected by that. And then the lack of accountability. I'd like to dig a little deeper. Tell me a little bit about this lack of support from the current judicial system. What system is it? Is that our own system here in Puyallup, or is that system in Pierce County? Where is the biggest concern?
The larger system in Pierce County.
The larger system.
Yep.
Again, as policymakers, what are we doing? Is there anything that we can do? Maybe we can't do it because it's judicial, but there has to be some kind of vocal point, right? Even if we have no oversight to affect the judicial branch, we could certainly be a voice that would speak to that and say, hey, this is not acceptable. We're asking this branch to please consider that. So I hope that we're advocating for that. And of course, the public safety building, I know that Mayor, you have some ideas on this, but anyway, I hope that we as a council are looking at this and not just being filled with empathy. We're sorry about this, but we're actually coming up with plans. Even though a quote might be outside of our control, it may be outside of our control directly, but indirectly, we are policymakers and we can put what's called positive political pressure on entities that are not doing the right thing to our constituents and to our department. So we'll make that for the record stated that we have opportunities to push back on this and get help.
Thank you, Councilmember Johnson. That does bring up the issue of participating in the legislative process as a city entity. In the past, I know Mayor Dorr, you have gone down to the legislature regarding some particular pieces of legislation and you've testified. I would gladly talk with any member about their willingness to do that. And I can apprise you of the process very easily of how to do that. I believe that absent a consensus or absent an actual vote on the council, you would have to do so as a position of council member and not necessarily representing the council. Our attorney, Joe Beck, could you advise on that?
And that's, I think, a generally correct statement. We do have legislative policies, and anything that council has approved as a legislative policy, you can take a position on based on that policy. But other than that, it would take a vote of or agreement by council to speak to anything not within those specified legislative policies.
Thank you. Having said that, I will gladly use the title of the position that I have, but I'll make it very well known that I represent myself in this position and I don't represent each one of you. And I will gladly go to Olympia and make that known on behalf of our police department, et cetera. So I'll just make that note. I'll gladly do that in the very, very near future. And I appreciate you bringing up that suggestion. With that, are there any more comments? I do want to compliment you, Police Chief Engel, that, you know, the police chief or the police in Puyallup are very admired. They, you know, I see people in coffee shops buying them coffee and meeting with them often, and they're really held in high regards. And that's a compliment because that's not the way it is everywhere. And I think you're right. Character matters. And the way you treat people, I've seen some very difficult situations with your police, and I think they've really kept their cool. And how you inculcate that into police officers, well, that's just probably a tribute to your leadership. So I want to thank you.
Thank you, Mayor.
You're very welcome. So we'll now move on to the next item with no objection to the downtown wayfinded signage program. Eric? Eric, if you could, please tell us up front what it is first.
Okay, so Eric Johnson, I'm the City Public Affairs Officer, and I'm here to give you an update on the wayfinding signage plan. So I'll actually go into that right now. So with the agenda, I'll talk about just a refresher on the project and the background, why we are coming to you tonight with this project, and then talk about the project goals, where we are in the project timeline, talk about the stakeholder workshop that we held last fall, and then talk about the next step in the process, and then open it up for questions and feedback from you all. So just as Mayor Castema alluded to, so just kind of a refresher on this project. So the wayfinding signage plan was identified in the Meridian Streetscapes final report, which you all approved in November 2022. And so within that final report were a list of 10 priority projects that you identified and the community identified as a priority. And this was one of those top requested projects by the council and the community. The number one most requested project was the Meeker Festival Street, which we will talk about in a few moments. And this was number two. So with that, the city contracted with MIG, our consultant, and we actually have Nathan Polanski from MIG on this call today to help answer questions. To help us produce the plan. So first off, what is wayfinding? So the best way that I can describe it is that it's a signage system. If designed well, it gets people from one place to another. It's those breadcrumbs that lead people from getting to the destination and then finding a place to park, finding attractions, finding shopping, and finding public restrooms as an example. It also creates arrival points, sense of that you have arrived in your destination. And also a good wayfinding signage system has a consistent look and aesthetic to it. I have some examples of these gateway arches. You can see this as an example, downtown Auburn's gateway arch. You've probably seen a similar downtown arches in other communities. Some other examples include vehicular directional signs. Those are the big green signs that you see that are pointing you to go left or right somewhere. And then also pedestrian kiosks and directionals. And pedestrian kiosks can be described as, whenever you enter a mall, you see the big giant map that has the "You Are Here" sticker on it. Those are pedestrian kiosks, so outdoor versions of those essentially. So why is wayfinding important? So wayfinding is important because it encourages people to get out of their cars and walk around. That was one of the things that was recommended in the Downtown Meridian Streetscape project. Was we need to get people into downtown, out of their cars, walking around and shopping, dining, and exploring our great downtown. So a good wayfinding signage system does just that. It also creates a sense of arrival. When you enter the downtown area, and if you have a really good wayfinding signage system, you know that you are entering a pedestrian-oriented area. It also creates a sense of ease and trust for drivers and travelers when they're entering these areas. They know where they are. Beyond the sort of emotional aspects of that, they're functional. It helps people get to where they need to go. We have parking signs, public restroom signs, shopping signs, go here, go there. It has a functional aspect to it. And it helps turn an area into a destination with some of the tourism branding that we've been doing. It helps enhance public awareness of downtown and bolsters tourism. So here are the project goals. Now, these were taken from the initial Meridian Streetscape report that was developed in November 2022. And since then, we've refined them a little bit as we've initiated the project and have gone through the project timeline so far. So first and foremost, project goal, help people navigate through downtown. Strengthen the connection between downtown and the fair. That was a clear thing that we heard from you all in the community, that we wanted to see a tighter bridge between downtown and the fair. Develop a consistent and coordinated signage system that's consistent across the board. Explore opportunities for incorporating art into the wayfinding system. That was another project goal. And then identify street improvements to enhance key entries to downtown and help develop and strengthen Puyallup's unique identity. So as we develop these signs and we implement these signs, we want to make sure that the infrastructure around them is upgraded to support those signs, especially when we develop the gateways. So here's where we are in the project timeline. So really this project can be divided into two phases. Phase one, the planning and conceptual phase, and then phase two, the design development, where we're actually getting into the nuts and bolts of the creation of the actual plan. So where the star is right now, we are in the research, planning, and strategy section of the project timeline. And then immediately after that, we'll be working on the wayfinding signage design concepts themselves. So with research, planning, and strategy, we held a site visit with MIG last fall. I believe it was in September, where they came down to downtown. They did a deep dive into our existing sign code. They interviewed staff, including staff from Public Works, City Engineering, Economic Development, and other divisions within the city. And they also took a tour of our Public Works corporate yards and did an assessment of our current sign making capabilities from Public Works. And then, of course, the big portion of the site visit was doing an audit of our existing signage in downtown. And there's some visual examples of some of the signs that we have currently in the downtown area, just a different variety of different types of signs. And all of those will be compiled into the initial draft report that we'll be working on. And then on November 1st, we hosted a stakeholder kickoff meeting at the Pioneer Park Pavilion. We invited project stakeholders to the meeting, including representatives from the Puyallup-Sumner Chamber of Commerce, PMSA, some downtown business owners, city staff. Arts Downtown was in attendance, staff from the fair, and also Rotator Creative, who are our tourism branding consultants. And so during the stakeholder meeting, we engaged with some exercises with them. We actually created a primary destinations map, which you can see over there on the right. I apologize, it looks a bit small there. I tried to make it fit on the slide deck. I apologize. So if you want to see a bigger version of it after the meeting, I can certainly provide that to you. But really, we created this map as kind of a starting point for conversations. And really what we did is we took all of the primary destinations that are in downtown and on the fairgrounds and put them up on a map and got feedback from the stakeholders about those different attractions. Because when we go to develop the signs, we want to make sure that we have the right attractions and the right destinations that are on those signs, because we're going to have a limited number of space on the actual signs themselves. So we want to make sure that we have those primary destinations on there. So some examples include Pioneer Park, the fair, the library, Acre Mansion, and then also all of the public city lots and also the fair parking lots. And then we also asked them a question about sort of elements to the signs. What 3 elements best characterize the city of Puyallup and should be reflected in the downtown wayfinding signage system? So we gave them just some examples for food for thought to consider. Is it the new Puyallup branding? Is it more agriculture elements such as farming, hops, daffodils, Washington State Fair, the Puyallup tribe, our geography, such as the valley, the foothills, the Puyallup River, Mount Rainier? Or is it historical landmarks such as Meeker Mansion? Or are there other elements that we're missing here that maybe should be included? And then we also asked them, which sign styles do you feel is most appropriate for downtown Puyallup? So we listed kind of 4 general design styles right here and got feedback from them. So kind of going from left to right, you've got traditional, simple, much more straightforward, to the point, no frills type signage. Clean and modern, we're getting into more of a sleek, modern design. Artistic, whimsical, definitely eclectic and colorful signage. And then historic, cultural, signs that hearken to the culture and the character of our community. So here's just kind of a summary of the feedback that we received from the stakeholders. So the top elements that the stakeholders felt that characterize Puyallup that should be included in the signs are the fair, our agriculture, the new tourism branding, Puyallup always in season, and also our geography. So Mount Rainier, the river, so on and so forth. The style of the signs should be simple and traditional. However, there was a strong contingent of folks that felt that including some whimsical artistic elements could help the sign stand out. The sign should be easy to maintain and repair. Our public works department wants to make sure that, if, say, for instance, somebody were to hit one of the signs with a vehicle, they can be easily repaired in-house rather than, paying an expensive fabricator to have to go in and redo that work. The signs have to be distinct and cohesive. The signs must make an emotional and cultural connection with downtown. So if you're driving downtown and you see these signs, you feel that connection, I am in Puyallup. We have to take a modern approach to the signs with also a nod to our history. And one of the biggest pieces of feedback that we got from the stakeholders is that when we do these new wayfinding signs, we need to consolidate our existing signage in downtown. We heard that loud and clear from the stakeholders. We have so much sign clutter in downtown. And I actually have a photo that represents this over on the right. You've got the State Fair parking sign. Just below that is the Lahar sign. We've got the pedestrian directional sign over here that says Civic Center. We also have a closure sign. We also have our Puyallup branding. Lots of clutter going on. So when we go to redo the wayfinding signage, consolidating that so that everything is consistent across the board. So our next steps is we'll incorporate the feedback that we hear from you all this evening into our initial report. Then we will finalize the initial draft report and then share that with the stakeholder group and you all as well. And then we'll begin working on the wayfinding signage design concepts. And then we will bring those design concepts to the stakeholder group, get their feedback, and then bring it to you all at a future date. And with that, open feedback and questions.
Thank you, Councilmember King, or Deputy Mayor King.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Great job on this.
Thank you.
and everyone that was involved on that. This has been one of the top things that I had mentioned when I first came on council 2 years ago. And so this was a top priority for something that I knew that constituents were wanting in our city. And so kudos for getting it to this next step. And I can't wait to see what the following steps look like. As far as, you know, the design and everything else, having been in the sign business for almost a decade myself in my previous life, these are all great options. And my personal preference would be somewhere in between the artistic and historic. Maybe a mixture of both. I'm not sure how yet, but I kind of like them both. Maybe in different areas. I don't know. Just my personal preference. But well done on the presentation. Super excited to be able to see this actually taking shape, and can't wait for us to implement it. And hurry up. Thank
try.
you. Thank you.
All right, thank you.
Councilmember Johnson.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Yeah, going back to you used a picture back on what is wayfinding. You've got a picture of the archway for downtown Auburn, if I recall right. I love that kind of archway sign. And I would just remind council, when I first came on here 8 years ago, at that time, there was funding that had already been earmarked and probably still is budgeted for some kind of a sign, archway sign. I mean, Steve, am I correct? Is there still some line item money for that? And if so, can we confirm?
Yeah, I think Councilmember Johnson, what you're likely remembering is the banner that's gone across Meridian. Yes, so
Yeah,
I
we
think
have
that's what
that.
you're, yes, and we do.
Yeah, I know, but I thought there was more significant money than that. If someone could do a little research to confirm, I thought we had earmarked some money for some kind of a banner / sign, and it was fairly significant. It's been sitting in the pot for a while, so I could be mistaken, but if we could review that. I know the Main Street, I mentioned to me, they were harping on me at one point many years ago to implement that. It's never got anywhere. Anyway, I like that archway deal. I would say that if we end up doing something like this, it should be that same kind of natural arch, but it should have a digital component so we could change the verbiage. So if there's some theme coming up of a car show or the fair, we could actually just kind of keep that same arch. Right now, it's just kind of static, welcome to Auburn, which is great. But if you had that same concept with some kind of a digital reader board, you could actually change the message depending on themes of farmers market, or the welcome to Puyallup, home of the farmers market, or Washington State Fair, or concerts in the park. We could do various themes of welcoming people to Puyallup with a message. I'd love to see some kind of a digital version of that concept. In terms of wayfinding, I felt one of the biggest, and for the life of me, I just can't. Every time I go out in that balcony over here and I look over at the park and I look literally 2 blocks south, maybe 3, it seems like the Washington State Fair is completely separate from the downtown core, yet it's only 3 blocks away, but there's no sense of connectivity. I hope that we continue to look for wayfinding, not just signage, but some kind of way to connect this walkability and connecting to the Washington State Fair. And we have basically, I mean, it's one of the top 10 largest fairs in the nation, and we're really not, I think, connecting in a real sense of walkability, design, and all we can do to make that happen. So I hope there's some effort to bring connectivity with the signage to connect certain parts of our city with the downtown core.
Yes. Yeah, and absolutely. So Renee McLean and her staff were at the stakeholder meeting, and yes, we heard that loud and clear from them that yes, it does feel like there is kind of a disconnect. So really, and that's why it's one of the project goals is strengthening the connection through the wayfinding signage plan and also development of gateways.
Okay, good. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember Johnson. Eric, I'd like to challenge you on this, and that is with a very simple statement. if this works, how do you prove it? And I challenged the consultant too for the same issue. And I think what that does is that puts you into a different mindset when you're doing this. In other words, you know, I look at that picture you showed me where if all the additional signage that there are, I counted 12, that's within the immediate vicinity of where my eye shot is. When you go up to a place like the South Hill, for example, and you say, identify any sign, you can't do it because there are hundreds and hundreds of visual pollution. It's very, very difficult to do that. So I applaud us going through this and simplifying it, but I challenge the consultant, I challenge you to actually come forward with evidence and how we get that evidence that it works. That people say, God, you know, I went into Puyallup, man, I could see where things were at. Meeker Mansion was very clear. Parking, if that is a factor, is very clear. There is a clear connection to the fair. I want to measure this because I have a feeling that these are oftentimes without that perspective, they're rather perfunctory. People do them because they feel obligated to do wayfinder signing. But yet the question is, does it really help? And I know, again, I use South Hill as an example, but boy, you know, for years, when you came into this city of Puyallup from the WSU Extension Center, there was a sign that said we were a tree city. Yet, if I said that to anybody, no one would know that. I mean, it became where you didn't notice these things because there are just too many of them. So if that involves paring down the signs, then you better pare them down to where it works. Because I would like a method of measurement, if possible, to see whether this makes any difference.
Yeah. And I'm glad that you brought that up because, you know, during the initial stakeholder outreach, you know, we got some feedback from people that said, well, you know, how can you prove that? People use Google Maps, people use Waze, they use different ways to find their way around. So again, to your point, how do you prove that? And I think that's going to take a combination of a lot of different things, including paring down the existing signs so that we have that consistent signage across the board.
I think it will cause us to sharpen our pencil when we're doing this. We're not just doing it to do it,
right?
But we're doing it to make a difference. And you've got to articulate what that is and how you measure it. Okay. I know it's a big challenge. Councilmember Adler.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Some good points brought up and I started to go there in my own mind. And then I said I wasn't going to go there. And then the mayor went there. So now that's where I've ended up with a couple of questions. And first one for me is talking about the fair and strengthening the relationship from downtown to the fair. When those conversations are happening, and can you share, is it more of trying to help folks wayfind where the fair is or where to park, or how do I get there from Main, you know, down to 9th Avenue Southwest? Is it, and part of my question with that too is, what was the fair's desire? What, you know, where did they land on providing feedback?
Yeah, no. So I think it's a combination of those different things, but I would tell you that, you know, from the feedback that I heard from the fair, it's that general feeling of feeling outside of downtown. You know, when you drive through going north on Meridian, you know, you've got the fairgrounds and then you enter downtown. They feel like there's kind of a delineation between downtown and the fairgrounds. And so making them feel more a part of the downtown fabric is what they would like to see from us as a city. So that could be a combination of different things. That could be the wayfinding signage plan, that could be the Meeker Festival Street and also the 9th Avenue Festival Street. So lots of different projects that will take to help strengthen that. But I think in relation to this project, it's developing. So for instance, you know, if we were to develop an archway along South Meridian right at the fairgrounds that says, welcome to downtown Puyallup, that makes them feel a part of downtown Puyallup because it's right there at the fairgrounds, just as an example.
I appreciate that background and answer, Eric. Thank you. I guess part of related to the former question is, you know, especially looking at the photo on the stakeholder feedback summary slide here, when we talk about this project and wayfinding, am I correct in believing that we are not talking about replacing what is affixed to the green pole, which is the Lahar warning sign, as well as the green State Fair parking sign? Is that separate?
Yeah, so that is included in the scope, so we would be looking at replacing some of those signs.
Okay.
So to make it more consistent.
Okay, thank you for keeping me honest here. I guess all of that to say is that I think that this is an important project. I agree with the mayor. I think it is a good question to ask, you know, how do you measure success? The last thing I would add is, you know, I would be open to any of these 4 sign styles, but I do think I would say artistic, but with a Puyallup flair, right? And I would concur with some of my colleagues here that, you know, go forth fairly quickly, because frankly, I think what we have has reached its lifetime, and I think we will all benefit from something new. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember Adler. Councilmember Johnson.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So I will give feedback on styling. I do like the artistic whimsical. I think that concept is good. I'd like to see, I like the color. The color theme is kind of cool. I do like the little bit wider signs. So the arrows with the colors are a little bit too small for me. So I feel like we'd be missing it. But those wider signs, even a little wider than that with colors, I think would get a little more statement on that. So that middle picture, but wider. And I'd like to see on the color coding consistent symbols. So if it's parking, that symbol is on that color with that. If it's the fair, that's fair symbol. If it's, you know, whatever city hall building, maybe it's our city. So maybe some kind of a theme that would be attached to the verbiage that would associate picture and verbiage. And then I want to go back to, you know, really clear, if we really want to get a great idea, it sounds overly simplistic, Mr. Mayor, and council, but you know, sometimes we don't need to recreate the wheel. One of the things that Mr. Mayor has always been very consistent on is what are other jurisdictions doing that we can glean from and find best case practices. Well, I'd like to say, forget about what other jurisdictions are doing. You know, I think one of the best people movers in our country that we can model is Disneyland. I mean, they move millions of people and they're a multi-billion-dollar company, and their signages, I'm sure, are very standardized and very clear for their downtown. I hope that somebody, the consultant, is looking at what they've already created and found to move people and direct them in massive inside the park and outside the park, that we could glean from that without having to recreate, you know, from some whatever Auburn is doing, Kent is doing, or Seattle's doing, but really looking from an industry that knows how to move people and signage in a big complex. So I hope that we're looking at the obvious, state the obvious, and bring back some municipal gleaning that we can get from a private and probably partnership with the city of Anaheim on what they're doing for signage. So those would be my comments on that. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember Johnson. That was a very good point. Are there any further comments or questions? Eric, is your presentation through?
I am done.
Okay, excellent.
I'm going to kick off the next one.
Oh, you are?
Yeah.
I was going to ask permission of my fellow council members on 8C. I apologize for the interruptions. I apologize to the audience. I apologize to the members. Do we, with your permission, do you mind if I put this to the next council meeting that we have, our update on the Meeker Festival Street project? If you'd like to proceed, that's fine. You have to tolerate me. I apologize for that. But with your permission, I'd like to move that to the next meeting. Is that correct? Okay.
Good by me.
Is the consultant present for that?
Yes, virtually.
Virtually, okay. City Manager Kirkley.
Yeah, the consultant is present, but it is not time sensitive. It is 10 o'clock. There are some challenges this evening. We can bring it back at the next council meeting.
Okay. I want to thank my colleagues for that. And again, I want to thank you for putting up with me. I promise I will be better next time, health-wise. Eric, thank you. With that, I'd like to move on to the city manager's report.
I will be very brief at your next meeting. You will hear on the Meeker Festival Street will be an item. There will be the public hearing on the methadone moratorium. There'll be a presentation on the Good Sam Hospital Master Plan, are the main items. And just as former Councilmember Palmer mentioned during the public comment, but I do want to repeat it, the draft environmental impact statement, there's a virtual public hearing this Thursday from 6 to 8, and then the in-person meeting is on January 17th from 6 to 8 at Pierce College. This is a county permitted project, but we have environmental impact control over it. So both very important meetings, and that is the extent of my report. Thank you.
Thank you, City Manager. We'll now have council reports, starting with Councilmember Johnson.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Yeah, I'll just want to reiterate, I know it's we've all experienced, but I just want to give a real testament to the constituents of our Puyallup coming to celebrate with us. It was a great community event. It's wonderful to see standing room only and moving out in the foyer. Again, it's a real testament to the passion and care that our constituents have for our city, and real wonderful experience. I want to also welcome our two new members for being part of the team, and the reelection of Councilmember Whitting as well, and congratulate Deputy Mayor and Mayor for their new roles, and looking forward to your leadership and expect to see great things over the next 2 years. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember Johnson. Councilmember Adler.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. It is an honor to join all of you here at the dais and to officially begin my term here in service to the great city that we call home. It is very humbling, and it has been a great introduction to a new challenge and opportunity for increased learning. I want to thank the staff for welcoming me. All of you do phenomenal work each and every day. And you have made me feel more and more confident each day to hopefully succeed in this role. So thank you for that. And again, I just want to thank my colleagues here for being so welcome and eager to start discussing what is ahead of us. And I do look forward to what is on the horizon. I just want to say very quickly too, and recognize that Monday is Dr. Martin Luther King Jr.'s birth. It is actually his birthday on the 15th, as well as the holiday. I have prepared some remarks, but I am going to forego that. But with the hope that next year we can have a proclamation honoring Dr. King and the holiday. And I hope that folks will join me in service. It is not a day off, it is a day on. And thank you very much again, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Councilmember Adler. We will make that so. Councilmember Gilliam.
I am ecstatic to get to be on this team. As a daughter of Puyallup who has come from serving from our at-risk youth in the community and their families, to now as a teacher in the school district, so serving our all families and students, to now having the honor of being on this team, serving our constituents and building our amazing city, continuing to build it up. It is such an honor to be here and to be your colleagues and to listen to the voices of our constituents and carry their heart for our city together. And I'm especially grateful for our city staff. They're phenomenal. I love the vision of service. I love the vision of connection and collaboration. And there's so much more that I'm eager to learn in this new role. But I just want to say thank you for the community for allowing us to serve you in this way.
Thank you, Councilmember Gilliam. Councilmember King. Oh, excuse me, you're Deputy Mayor. Councilmember Dorr.
Thank you. in the interest of time, I will give my Central Pierce update next week. So I just want to welcome Councilmember Adler and Councilmember Gilliam. It's been an honor to be your friends up to this point, and I don't know any other individuals that have that passion and heart for Puyallup. I know some people that might be equal, but you guys have demonstrated that for years. So I'm really excited to have you here. Thank you to former deputy mayor and former mayor for your service. We've all been in that position, and congratulations to the new leadership. Mayor Castema, I think that you'll do a fantastic job, and I'm sorry that you are I've been in your shoes under the weather, and that's why I got the cough drops. So I hope you feel better. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember Dorr. It is true, Councilmember Dorr has given me probably close to 100 cough drops. Councilmember Whitting.
I just wanted to, I'm looking at my weather forecast for the rest of the week, and this is an El Nino year, so we can expect some pretty nasty weather this year, and we seem to be, if my perception is accurate, we seem to be seeing a few more people on our streets. And in the next week, we've got a couple of days of snow, 5 days with lows in the teens and highs below freezing. So it's going to be some difficult times. I know that we have emergency plans in place, and I trust that we do so. So let me just direct that question to City Manager Kirkley.
Yes, thank you, Councilmember Whitting. We have our community outreach officer, Officer Pearson, and then Michelle Price, who is our support specialist in the Emergency Operations Center. We are aware of the impending snow that likely will be coming in Friday into Saturday. Perhaps that's changed. And so they are already out and will be out the next couple days assessing individuals who are unhoused and who may need some assistance during that snowstorm. And so that is one of our standard operating procedures, and they will continue to do that in the next couple days.
Yeah, and my concern there is not just for people that are living outdoors, but also for community members. We get into some of these winter storms, and some of our Tree City fir branches fall on power lines, and the next thing you know, we've got blocks of the city that doesn't have power, and in those kind of weather temperatures, being prepared to accommodate particularly seniors that may be not having heat in their homes. Anyway, that's just a concern, and I know you've got plans in place and are working on. I know Kirsten does a great job in that whole area, and I'd appreciate it if you could extend my gratitude to her for the work that she does on behalf of folks that may encounter difficulties. The other thing that I'd also like to express my appreciation for Councilmember Adler's comments about Martin Luther King and the legacy that he represents, and the need to be cognizant and respectful of our minority communities in the city. And I find myself in a difficult situation that I think that I need to make public and share with the public as well as my fellow council members. I have been accused of racism, and in my work with homeless populations within the continuum of care, there's been some allegations of racism that have been directed my way, and I regret that this has happened. I have reached out and tried to find a way to reach understanding with the folks that are making those allegations. I have not been able to make contact with them. I believe strongly that it's a misunderstanding and a misinterpretation of what I was trying to say. But anyway, I just wanted to make you aware of that and assure you that I continue to work for less fortunate and whatever diversity, equity, and inclusion category they may fall into. I am devoting a lot of my time to doing that work and will continue to do so if I'm allowed to. Thank you.
Thank you. Yeah. Thank you, Councilmember Whitting. Councilmember King, Deputy Mayor.
Thank you, sir. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I would just like to, again, as all the council members have done, is welcome our newest council members, Councilmember Adler and Councilmember Gilliam. You ladies are awesome, and I'm so excited to have you on our council here on the dais. And I'm excited to see what the next 2 years, at least while I'm here, and see whatever else happens after that. But I'm excited for the next 2 years for sure, and couldn't be more thrilled about that. And I also want to give a quick thanks to everyone on the city staff from top to bottom. You guys are amazing. You guys are going to do great things. We have a full plate ahead of us over the next year, probably longer. And I'm super excited to be a part of that as well. And I couldn't be more thrilled and honored to be able to sit next to someone who I deeply respect and admire, and take in all of his wisdom, and serving next to him as his deputy mayor. Thank you, Mayor Castema. And I look forward to serving with you and the entire council over these next 2 years. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember King. I thank you for that compliment. I will just end this evening. You've already heard me speak about the meaning of this position, my overall philosophy. I do want to thank, special note to Councilmember Johnson for making such a smooth transition from one mayor to the other. I think that's very important, and it's how it's been laid out in the code here in Puyallup by previous leaders. If I could only make one statement, I echo Councilmember Adler, Councilmember Gilliam being just phenomenal additions to the city council. But I want to say this about every one of you. You know, this is the leadership of Puyallup. Us here, us individually, of course, with all of our connections, but we are the ones that will be setting the course for this city in the future. And it does matter. Again, as I travel through Europe, I see various cities and they have different aspects about them, some more successful than others. And I'm convinced that, you know, you could give all the assets to a community, but if they don't have the leadership, they will not be successful. And I think our community is lucky to have all of you on board. And I am so honored to be part of this. So thank you for that. I promise next time I'll be in better health. I'll be by then on the ski slopes, and hopefully my life will have changed. Okay. So with that, I'm going to end this meeting. This ends the Puyallup City Council meeting on the 9th.